No, it does work now. This doesn't work as good. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Then you have to can't hit over here.
I know. That's the frustrating thing. Yeah. Johnny, you ready? Johnny, you ready? Carrie, you ready? Throw some at Colin over there. You good? Good afternoon. The regular meeting of the City Commission for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019 will come to order. Please silence all your cell phones. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Owen,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Here.
Commissioner Colodi,
Here.
Commissioner Sachs,
Here.
Commissioner McGuirk.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, Police Department Chaplain Sheila Turner will give the invocation. Please stand for that invocation. Remain standing for the pledge afterwards.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the lineup that we have before us. And we thank you for the retirees and all the wonderful things that's happening in our great city. Continue to help us with the approvals of these great things. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Khaled, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes, sir.
Gentlemen, I'll pull this now or talk about this now real quick, just in case someone's here on this item. The P&Z appointment, it's a critical appointment. I wasn't aware that we had that vacancy until this agenda came out and just have not had time. As we've talked before, I like to talk to people, interview people, make sure we've got enough people that have applied, et cetera. And I just have not had a chance to do that with some. Some I had talked to the time before, but there are some new applications. So I would very much appreciate it if we were able to delay that until our next meeting. That may impact them at one of their meetings, but I think it's a small price to pay to make sure we get a really good application. Any concerns with doing that? Any objections to doing that?
Mayor, I can support that.
Okay. So we'll move that item, that second board appointment for P&Z, to be on the May 14th agenda. So if you're here for that item, come back on May 14th. And with that, we have a special presentation by our police chief, the retirement of one of our officers.
Dave Williams, you want to join me up here, please? This is a very bittersweet time for us here in the police department. We get a chance to celebrate the retirement of a member of our family, and while we're happy for what holds for him in the future, we're sad to see him go. So this is just our chance to, we've already said goodbye to him at our own little party, but this is our chance to publicly say good luck, and we're happy that you're doing something for you and your family. So for Dave Williams, who was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and then moved here as a very young man, and he went to the Florida Air Academy. I did not know that. Somebody had to tell me that. And then he went to Daytona State, where he initially, I guess, wanted to be a firefighter EMT. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But he also earned his associate's degree there, so we're real proud of him for that. I had a chance. Dave comes from a law enforcement family. His wife Kelly, who's not here tonight, was a former police officer for New Smyrna Beach, and his dad actually worked for the sheriff's office years ago when I was a young deputy, and his dad and I worked together. And I could tell you all some stories about that, but I wouldn't be able to do it in the public arena. So his dad was quite the character. Dave was initially hired as a dispatcher here in New Smyrna, and after a little while doing that, he went and got his law enforcement certification, and then in 1999 he was hired as a police officer. Dave's pretty much done everything there is to do in this agency as a police officer. He was a canine officer. He's a master patrol officer. He was a training officer. And where I knew him most since I got here was as our department training officer. This is an area where I think Dave really excelled. His ability to teach young officers and our existing officers with his patience and his determination to have people do things right was really where I thought he was really, really good at what he's done. And he's still a very good teacher. Dave also was on the SWAT team for many years. And then a couple of years ago, actually 2 years ago, April, Dave got promoted to sergeant, where he then retired. Dave has been recognized throughout his career, many commendations and awards. The two most notable that I know are in 2003, he received the Life Saving Award, and then in 2013, he was selected as Police Officer of the Year. So, as I said, Dave is married to Kelly, and then he's got 3 children, Colby, Ryder, and Rosalind. The other thing we do in the police department is we want for the officers and their family to remember us and remember their career in a very fond way. So the officers get to put together, they give us a bunch of stuff, and we put it in a shadow box for them. So this is a real visual representation of Dave's career. There's handcuffs in there, which obviously he used on 1 or 2 occasions. Then the canine pats and the SWAT pats and stuff like that. So this is something that Dave will always be able to look on the wall in either his office or his home and be able to fondly remember his time here in the city of New Smyrna Beach. So Dave, as I said before, I was going to get back to the whole firefighter thing. Dave is now going on to work. He works right now. In fact, he has to go to work tonight for the city of Daytona Beach Shores. And in Daytona Beach Shores, for those of you that don't know, they do everything up there. They're police officers and firefighters and EMT. So I cannot wait, as I was telling the mayor a little while ago, for the first time in like mid-August when they're working on a brush fire somewhere and he's in bunker gear sweating, and I'm going to text him and remind him about how nice it is to be in a patrol car with air conditioning. So, Dave, anything you'd like to say?
No, I just appreciate all the opportunity the city gave me. It's been amazing to represent the city and have the opportunity to work here. Great support with the police chief and all of our administrative staff at the agency. And just to speak to what a devout agency you have, the police officers here are just amazing, and it really is a family. The people I'll stay in contact with no matter where I go the rest of my life. It really has been a great opportunity for me, and I'll always cherish it. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, right? I know. All right. That's That's really special.
Did they want to come up and get a photo?
No, he said they would get some outside. Yeah, I
Okay.
offered that. Yeah, yeah, they're gonna grab some pictures outside. All right. Next item up is public participation. 3-minute time limit will be imposed unless otherwise granted. This is your chance to address the commission on any topic desired, especially for tonight's agenda, those items on the consent agenda, items under administrative items, new business, and ordinances on first readings, and boards and commissions. So those items, this is your one and only chance to speak on. The items under second readings and public hearings, you will have a chance to speak specifically to those items at that time if you desire. So with that introduction, do we have any folks who would like to speak as part of public participation? Come on forward. If you would like to speak after the current speaker, you can queue up on the front row here. We'll be fine while Angie comes.
Good evening, everyone. I actually want to represent tonight the New Smyrna Beach Residents Coalition, a group that
Get a
all of you,
name and
oh, it's Angie Beretta Herman, 108 Esther Street.
thank you.
I'm representing the New Smyrna Beach Residents Coalition. It's a group, as many of you know, it's committed to working with the city to preserve and to maintain the beauty of our city, and to encourage and support sustainable growth that is so critical to maintaining the vitality of our community and protecting the fragile ecosystem upon which we all depend. Ordinance 19-19 was developed by city staff after an in-depth consultation process that included experts in multiple community groups, and it was approved by the Planning and Zoning Board. The coalition and its hundreds of members, our distribution list now is in excess of 1,500 members, support Ordinance 1919 as a sensible and environmentally correct approach to growth and development. So I'm asking for your support of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to address the commission?
Randy Herman, 108 Esther Street. It's hard to follow your wife when you're, but anyway, most of my life that's been the case. But anyway, we won't go into that tonight.
That's not on the agenda.
I'm here tonight talking as the chair of the Neighborhood Council, and I first want to thank all of the commission for your unanimous support for mandate resolution 2413, reapproving the Neighborhood Council, and your amendment resolution 1519, which enlarged the board by 2. I appreciate the support and the belief in what the Neighborhood Council can do for the city. Last night it just happened to be fortuitously Earth Day, and the theme of the evening was really around single-use plastics. We had 3 excellent presentations from the Dream Green group, the Marine Discovery Center, our own Marine Discovery, and the Southeast Volusia Chamber of Commerce. All gave informative talks about research, current concerns, and surprisingly, great initiatives that are already underway, both in the private and the public sector. All 3, and then later public testimony, we had quite a large turnout, probably the largest I've ever seen at Neighborhood Council, in support of our city taking not only a strong stand, but leadership in this arena, which is happening, as you all know, all over the globe. But in fact, we had one speaker, a young man whose grandmother lives here, from Poland, and he was 10 years old, and he spoke eloquently about the crisis that Europe faces with no more landfill, that they have no choice but to really not recycle, but redo how they do things. So I think we're on the right track, and the Neighborhood Council voted to support Resolution 1719 on the prohibition. of single-use plastics, and we hope to bring back some more critique of pros and cons of that resolution before your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. To be clear, that one isn't on the agenda tonight, but it's for June discussion, but yeah. Any other members of the public wish to speak tonight? Going once. All right. Seeing none. Consent agenda. Does any member of the city commission wish to remove any item on the consent agenda? We'll start with the vice mayor.
In.
Item N, okay. Jason?
No, I did not, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner McGuirk?
So you're looking over this way.
Yes, yeah.
H and N, please.
H and N is already pulled. Commissioner Colodi?
Well, again, for N, I would also like to have F and P.
F and P. For 2 weeks in a row, we didn't pull a single thing. Now we pull half of it.
Was that
P
a
or E?
E or
P.
P?
I heard P.
P's and Peter.
P is in Peter. Okay. And that, I wanted to pull, but I may not anymore. Yeah, no, I'm good. All right, do I have a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda for clarity? That's item A, B, C, D, E, G, I, J, K, L, and O. And M, yep, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
City clerk?
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item F, Commissioner Colodi. We're just gonna go down the line.
It's basically just a comment on this one,
Okay?
is this lease is to allow for Department of Transportation to do necessary repairs on the South Causeway. And I have spoke with our Assistant City Manager, knowing that we are preparing an in-house upgrade to the park to make sure that that fits in with that, and hopefully we'll get some improvements over what's there right now. That's it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
City clerk?
Commissioner Sachs,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Item H, Jake.
Yes, a question for our city attorney. Since this is an agreement to pay for services, is it possible to ask for conditions, two in particular, such as the posting of the veterinarian's license in the building main office? And can we always be provided with entry into all parts of the building? Just in case, God forbid, something happens, I don't expect it, but our code enforcement and police officers, it would be nice if they could have access if there was a problem.
Posting of the veterinarian license would be a requirement by the State Department of Business, DBPR. That would be something they would inspect. That wouldn't be part of our contract negotiation. The second one provided entry into all parts of the building. We have a good relationship with the Humane Society, and we have not had any issues with Megan being able to go in when she needs to go in. In the past, when there have been issues, the police department has been able to go in and inspect. So I don't believe it would be appropriate to insert a contract provision to that effect. So that's their building, their agency that they're running. So if there's a problem, we can get in there. But I don't think that we should have a carte blanche entry into their operations.
Would be,
That's fair enough. We have a good relationship. and I hope it continues. Thank you.
Yeah, I think under the terms of the contract that I read, I think it'd be fairly unusual for us to have that level of access with this kind of a contract, so.
One thing I did want to point out, there had been an issue with, last fall, some dispute over after-hours care and who would pay for that. We talked to McGuirk to find out, well, how often does this issue arise? It hadn't arisen. We couldn't come to terms on that, so we went back to the old language that did not address after-hours care. So the contract that's attached has that after-hours care, and so that has been stricken from the agreement.
Okay. Any other discussion on item H? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
Jake pulled it, does he want to make a motion?
I can make
Make a
a motion
motion.
to approve, since I pulled it, yes.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs.
Yes,
Mayor Owen.
Yes.
thank you.
Item N, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, my only comment on this is, I'm afraid of the unintended consequences that we start here and now by removing sidewalks. If I'm not mistaken, it's still going to be the city right-of-way. So there still could be issues with them parking within the right-of-way and not legally allowed to, where we are going to incur some costs, where they're minimal or not. We're still going to incur costs with staff going out there, tearing up the old sidewalks and then having to dispose of that properly. So I'm not in favor of that action. I would, if the sidewalks have been there, they've always been there. I think that we need to leave them there. I think the parking issue is a hit and miss kind of thing, so it's not really. I think the chief even admitted last time that if they're out there for another reason, that's when they actually will take action, but otherwise they don't routinely patrol that area. So I think it's, the business owner, should be responsible for his parking and make sure his patrons are parking in an appropriate area. I can't see you spending city tax dollars on tearing up perfectly good sidewalk. It's my comments.
Okay. I think, to me, this is correcting a previous unintended consequence of when that's, because I don't think the sidewalk has always been there. I was under the impression it was relatively new. And there's another option. It's not like we're cutting off access. This is the only place along that entire corridor that has one on both the, the kind of the top side and the lower side, if I can use those terms. So to me, it's just kind of cleaning up. It's taking our officers out of kind of a tight spot of trying to, be the one to arbitrate whether or not somebody should or shouldn't park there. So I like the idea,
But with due respect, there's also sidewalks on the other side in front of the condominiums. So, I mean, if we remove sidewalks from one business and they come to us next month going, hey, I want you to remove the sidewalks in front of the condos east and west so that we can create additional parking spaces. I mean, it's just opening a can of worms. So, yes, I understand there's dual sidewalks,
Yeah.
but that sidewalk continues from that location all the way to the bridge. So,
yeah. Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
sure.
having lived over that area for a long time, the sidewalk, as it's configured now, is used by the Marine Discovery Center when they take their little troop of summer visitors over to the AOB site. They're well corralled as they go, but this is a continuous sidewalk from that over to the AOB site, and then they can cross the street. I would hate to see it taken out unless there's one short missing section of sidewalk between the service road and the North Causeway that should be put in if that other sidewalk is removed. It's relatively short, maybe 20 feet in length, and would provide direct connection for them. I don't even necessarily want to bear any expense at all. It's my understanding that the proprietors of the business would take care of that. I also wouldn't want to see the sidewalk in itself removed, because it would become a parking area and be kind of waste of money to remove hard surface that somebody could park on. Maybe it could be striped for parking. Maybe it could be painted black so it doesn't look like a sidewalk. But we got to maintain a constant sidewalk through that area. It's very important we do. It should also be noted that when the North Causeway Beautification Project went in, that area was supposed to have been converted to parking, but was taken out for lack of funds to do it. It was the same story on the other side down by the Buena Vista. There was supposed to be 2 parking areas placed there. Neither were built. So I have no problem with the use of the sidewalk going away as long as that short section of sidewalk, which would become missing, is put in place first. I hope that was clear. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask that maybe the best thing to do is postpone this and bring this back at a later date so I can better understand each position and what's going on, because I think that there is a solution here. I think that we don't need to spend taxpayer money, but I think that there's a long-term plan here to deal with that parking issue, and I just think right now there's probably a little too much confusion to move this forward. I think I'm going to make a motion to bring this back at the next meeting after we've had time to discuss this internally with staff.
And Mayor, if I may, I was going to suggest that maybe we could contact the business owners and to see if they wanted to maybe pave that area along with the sidewalk and keep it. So this way it's well maintained and they'll be responsible for putting that asphalt. And I was going to suggest that they could do that during our resurfacing so they could utilize on our low-cost price.
Okay. We have a motion to table this until the May 14th
Mr. Mayor,
meeting.
before we make a motion, I need to make a comment.
And the motion's been made. Now,
Second.
we've got a second. Now we can discuss it. Go ahead.
It's city property. People use it. It's part of a paved or concreted network of sidewalks. The taxpayers are losing an asset. So as much as I'm sympathetic to the needs of merchants with their parking issues, I don't believe we should reduce that network. In fact, someday we may have to expand it, so I would be against taking that sidewalk away.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we had a motion to table this. We had a second. Any other discussion on that? I would say just my position is that this, people have been parking on that sidewalk, I think, as long as the sidewalk has been there. I would argue, I mean, this is what I'm told. It's not a business that I frequent, but, and so this is simply looking for a path where we don't put our officers in an awkward spot of trying to enforce something on occasion when they're called to the area, just recognizing that it's, what it's used for. But all are valid points. I'm certainly okay with extending this, so. City Clerk, can we have a roll call on that?
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs,
So the vote is
To move it to the May
Move
14th
it,
meeting.
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes?
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Item N has been moved to the May 14th meeting, and let's not throw, we won't put that on the consent agenda. Item K, Commissioner Colodi. I'm sorry, P. She's at P.
We did pull K also, so we might as well do that one first.
Did I miss K? No, we didn't pull K.
Okay,
K has been approved.
that's it for K.
Item
It
P
was
was
a
pulled.
comment
though.
only. Okay, item P. This involves Volusia County coming up with a flood management plan. It's very complicated. It's very long. I've read it. I think it's to our benefit to support it, but I would like to hear a little presentation from our staff as to their opinion on it. And if that's available tonight, I would like to hear it now, and if not, we could postpone it.
think staff is ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Prepared my report while I was sitting in the audience. So, as part of the multi-jurisdictional local mitigation strategy, this is one element of it. Obviously, Volusia County and New Smyrna Beach, we're vulnerable to wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, etc. While we cannot stop those, we can abate the impacts, we can reduce the impacts to life, safety, property, and economic recovery. Well, that's what this program does. There's many stakeholders involved, all the cities, county, Red Cross, Florida Hospital. So they're all involved with this program, which follows the guidelines of the Disaster Mitigation Act passed by Congress in 2000. So there are, bylaws and procedures set up through state and federal guidelines. And we are a voting member, for instance, and the flood mitigation element of it. Right now, I'm the voting member for the LMS. So that allows us to be prepared and be positioned much better than other communities when there are pre-development PMA, disaster funding available, FMA, flood mitigation assistance, HMGP, hazard mitigation grant program. When all those dollars are available, you're part of this program. So that means you get a priority over other communities. This sets up, it is very lengthy, it has a lot of categories to it. It talks about prevention, it talks about structural property protection, structural improvements, site or engineering improvements, capital improvement projects to preserve floodplain areas, for instance, natural resource preservation, obviously, and public education. So every year, the county, their environmental services, in May actually conduct a public outreach for response and how do they communicate? Do reverse 911? They send out brochures. So they do a lot of the outreach for us as part of this program. So it is very beneficial, and it does help protect, property values. It helps us recover whenever there's an event. It helps protect the critical facilities, which are the ALF and the hospitals. So there's a priority, and it also assists with recovery with fire rescue and police. So the whole program is very advantageous. In fact, we actually don't even have a real choice because of the number of repetitive losses that we have in the city of New Smyrna Beach, which is greater than 10, mandates that we be in this LMS program. And part of it is to develop a floodplain management plan. So, and with that plan, we go into the various parts of the community which either have a repetitive loss or severe repetitive loss or even nuisance flooding. And we establish a program and we go through all the funding, design, and then we implement it, much as we've done on Central Beach and recently in Islesboro subdivision. So we really need to approve the floodplain management program, this plan, as part of the integrated LMS program. If you have any questions specifically, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
Just imagine how good that would have been if we'd have given him more time to give a presentation. Thank you, Cal.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No questions, just comments.
Comments, sure.
It's a very detailed and in-depth report, which will provide a lot of invaluable information for us as we go forward with the LDR. It's detailed to the point where it even points out which city-owned buildings we have that are susceptible to flooding. So I totally support this. It was a big report, and I liked your presentation, and hopefully everybody can understand it's not just item P on a consent agenda. It really makes an impact on this city.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on item P? If not,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
oh, yes.
A question for Kyle, please. So the Insurance Services Office evaluates us. Have we had pretty good evaluations in the past? And where do we lie?
Yes.
ultimately?
Yes, Commissioner Sachs. As a matter of fact, our recertification is coming up May 1st. So we're working diligently on that, and one of the items is to get city commissioner approval of the FMP, which then gives us points. And it's pretty good value points. I think it's around 250. And we've worked hard with other communities to enhance our PPI, which is a public participation input. We've really worked to the point where we can maximize those points. And if you're in the special flood hazard area, your premiums are reduced by right now 15% because we're a grade 7. We're hoping with this modification we just submitted and the recertification coming up, we hope to fall a grade, which is good. It's kind of like golf. The lower score, the better. So hopefully we become a grade 6, which would then reduce everyone's premiums by 20% if they're in the special flood hazard area, which is what people call the floodplain.
Yes.
And Commissioner Sachs, we are the first city to apply for the CRS program in '92 in Volusia County.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for helping us get there.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. All right, next item up. Six-month status report regarding recycling, collection, and processing. Faith has a report.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. We have quite a bit of information on the history on this. The city went out to bid for recycling services in 2016 and awarded it to Waste Pro for a 5-year contract. Subsequent to that, you know, all the changes with recycling with China and less demand for paper and everything caused them to come to us and ask us to increase or to pay for the cost of processing recycling due to their increased cost of doing business. So in September of 2018, the City Commission approved Waste Pro's request for a rate adjustment that requires us to pay $77.50 per ton of recyclable materials. And you had recommended the Commission at that time wanted to do a reevaluation in 6 months to see if anything had changed. At that time, we were estimating, based on the quantity of recyclables that we were getting, that it would be, that the estimate would come out to be $142,000 per year for that cost to process the recyclables. And as of now, the average cost of processing recycled materials per month is $13,312 based on the last 6 months, which would project out to $159,000. Waste Pro has suggested several times that the city may want to consider eliminating glass because there is very limited use for what they can do with recycled glass. They use it as a fill in a landfill over like the road base for a landfill. I'm hoping that they will find some other sources for glass. As you know, the city of Deltona totally eliminated their recycling program. Ormond Beach eliminated glass. DeLand is using a software application to re-educate their residents about clean recycling. We are looking at something like that too. Volusia County is not doing any changes to their recycling program. They're running a back to basics education campaign and sending out, I believe we're having a meeting with them tomorrow with other cities in the county to talk about what everybody's doing. And eliminating glass, if everyone stopped putting glass in their recycling and based on the rates that we'd be getting, instead of paying $77.50 per ton for the glass, you'd pay $34 per ton. But that's if everybody complied and there was no glass in the recycling. And that would save the city about $2,466 per month if we chose to eliminate glass. City staff was not recommending making any changes to the recycling program now, given, you know, all the emphasis on environmental issues and different things that we've been looking at. We're not recommending a change because I think it would be so hard to reinstate it later. So that's basically my report. If you have any questions, or if we could look at it again during the, you know, in 6 months at the budget process for the new year.
Okay. Any comments, Commissioner?
Hi, Faith, how are you? I wanted to make sure I understood the glass issue. There's not much of a demand and use for recycled glass.
Right.
Why would we not remove it from the recycling? I guess what I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing from staff is that the perception out there may be negative if we did.
Possibly.
So what I'd like to do is pay a little more attention. I'm impressed by the numbers. Glass weighs a lot of money.
Right.
If the residents are recycling and they're putting glass in a recycle bin, and they're under the belief and perception that that's getting recycled, and it's not, I think the most important thing we can do is acknowledge that, educate our public, and certainly not charge them for something they're not getting. If I'm interpreting this issue properly. So I'd like to see us, maybe this come back up again in a few months. Maybe we can spend some time on this internally, taking a look at it. But if we're charging the residents, we're all paying more money to recycle something that's not being recycled. I don't want to do something because it feels good or sounds good. I want to do something because it has a true, real, and practical purpose, which it does not appear that recycling glass has that right now.
There's a company in Sarasota that I keep asking Waste Pro if they could use, because they do recycle glass, but I think the transport and the different costs associated with that have not been beneficial. You know, there's the hope that there will be more industries that come up with ways to use recycled materials. And I don't know if the commission remembers, as part of the contractor owns the recycled materials once they're collected. That's theirs to decide where to dispose of. So.
Right, and I think talking to the commission, I think the best thing that we can do is acknowledge the reality of a situation and certainly not charge our residents for something that's not happening. And if this becomes a desirable recycled item again, we can always go back to it. But I'm concerned on 2 points, just to be clear. Number one, we're charging people for something they're not getting, and number two, the perception needs to come from us to change. We are the leadership in the community. If this glass is not being recycled, it is up to us to make the important decisions and move forward with that and let the public know. Thank you, Faith.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
My wife will tell you that I am the king of recycling. I recycle everything, or used to. But I stand behind Commissioner McGuirk. If we can eliminate the glass and save some cost savings to the citizens, if the glass is going to the landfill anyway, we're paying more to process it that way. I would certainly be in favor of eliminating glass from our recycles and come back, and if the market changes and there is some place for it to go to some point in the future, then we can reinstitute it. It's just an educational thing that we need to do amongst our citizens. And as much as I don't want to say it, I'm all for not recycling the glass. So.
Other comments?
Yes. I support checking in another 6 months to see how it's going. Glass is basically the most common element, sand. on the face of the earth, and there's not a lot of places that needed to make anything. I do not want to eliminate recycling per se. I want to keep it. I've recycled my entire life. I lived in a place where if you didn't recycle, you had to pay out of your pocket to get rid of things, so I really got used to it. One comment I do have, though, where I live, I get recycling and regular pickup on Monday. I get natural growth pickup on Wednesday. Last couple times around, they've been throwing my natural growth in the truck with everything else, and we're paying for that. So I think we got to step up our monitoring of them. That's my comments.
One quick question, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Miller, do you have an idea on what percentage, has anyone in the field ever told you what percentage of the glass may be recycled?
Well, I will tell you, they recently told me that, our recycling goes to Ocala, they have the materials recovery facility that, it looks like it goes in a garbage truck, but it goes up there and it's single stream and it's separated. Ken DeForest with Waste Pro told me a couple weeks ago that the Ocala landfill where they used to take the glass is no longer accepting it as a base. So I tried to reach out to him today to get the very latest update, and I didn't get to him, but I believe it's not being recycled right now.
So my thoughts on this would be, my biggest worry, and I think this is what staff raised as a concern to some degree, is mixed messaging across an area. So all of a sudden, Deltona's doing this, and here we only take green grass, and when you go to Edgewater, they don't do anything. I'm afraid that if we become very fragmented, that as a general rule, the public is going to become less and less incentivized to do recycling. I was just looking in our agenda package. We've got draft of things that's being provided by the county. The top 5 big recyclable items. Number 1 is glass bottles. And it's got other items listed. So we had a presentation on this at the elected officials roundtable meeting 2 or 3 meetings ago. And what I mentioned then was I felt like if the cities worked together on a unified ad campaign that gave consistent messaging, that I felt like it would be more effective and impactful for the general public. And I thought we could even reach a broader audience if we kind of pooled our resources. That might be a way to combat this. Some of the negative perceptions of hey, we're stopping recycling. Because I agree with you. I don't want to spend money on something that isn't actually happening. But I also feel like if there was a market that could recover. Or be in place, and I know there's a lot of energy being invested into this right now, into this renewable and recyclable market. So if it's able to recover, and we've trained the public to not recycle, then all of a sudden we say, oh no, now you do. I feel like I think it may be hard to gain back the ground that we would lose for the $24 grand a year that we would save. So I think putting this on ice for 6 months, in the meantime, having staff coordinate with other cities, and if we could get at least even just the southeast Volusia cities to kind of move in lockstep on what we're going to do, and if that's between now and 6 months, I'm okay with that. But if we could at least work together with maybe those sister cities up and down the coast, just immediately north and south of us, on a unified message, I think it could be more impactful and create more awareness of the issue.
That's what we were hoping to do with the county as well, but we could
Agreed.
look on just this side. Just remember that some have, for instance, Edgewater collects their own. They don't use a hauler, so they have a different system. Some are single stream, some are, sorted at the curb. So that's where we've run into a little bit of the issues on the same messaging, but we'll need to continue working on that.
Yeah, and maybe it's not perfect, maybe,
Right.
but if we could be consistent, especially the county, because as we all know, your neighbor may be in the county even though you're in the city. And so if we don't have consistent messaging with the county, it's going to get real convoluted, because all of a sudden my neighbor down the road is, they're recycling X and I can't, and that's going to be confusion. So. So it's not really a call for a motion here. This is just kind of a status report, so,
I'd just like to make sure that staff can get back to us in a few months and give us some numbers. Can we get some actual numbers on how much of the glass is being recycled? And also a little more detail of the cost that it may be for the residents and for the city.
We'll give you a report in 2 months.
2 months, 3 months, whatever, could give us some time. And the mayor made, I think, a very valid point when he said, if we stop people to get them back doing it, that could be a challenge. But I also don't want to leave the people with the belief that we're recycling when we're not and they're being charged it's a dicey situation. So yes, 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, whenever staff is comfortable that you guys have got the information we're looking for. Thank you.
I'd also just add to that if there's, let's communicate with our sister cities, and if they're moving or they want to move, and, it's between, earlier than 2 months, don't hesitate to bring it back and say, hey, we've got some motion on this, here's what we're going to try to do as kind of a unified front. I think that'd be the way to approach it, so. Item B, disability signs. Do we have a staff report on item B? Yes, Carrie, sorry.
At the last meeting, issue was raised regarding installing deaf child signs, and you all had asked for some research on any sort of liability issues that may arise with that. I provided you all with a memo that Assistant City Attorney Chris Ryan provided. There are a number of cities that are against the signs. Some of the concerns they raise that they may have the opposite of the intended effect. And it would provide, they feel, some people believe it provides a false sense of security for parents that if the sign is up, their child is safe. That being said, I did check with our municipal insurer, FMIT. They do not have a policy against these signs. So what I did was I provided some forms that if you all choose to approve the use of or the installation of these deaf child signs, we can use these forms, and then that way it's a process established citywide, and somebody can just use these forms to get a sign rather than publicly calling out a certain address or, doing that at the dais. And so with that, you all can decide which way to go on that.
Okay. So we're looking for a decision from the commission on whether we want to do this. The agenda package material, very, very well done. And actually, I want to pause there. Commissioner Colodi said something, on the consent agenda, and it really applies to all these. And we pass over some of these items so quickly, but staff has put in a tremendous amount of time and effort and diligence in preparing. And, that one report by the city engineer was hundreds of pages. So excellent work on this by the city attorney's office. So looking for guidance on whether a lot of cities, as you read, are not doing this because it gives that false sense of security. Various opinions on that, but is this something we want to open up and put these forms available? I think if we do it, we definitely do it via the way recommended by the city attorney using the forms, or is this something we do not want to do?
Mr. Mayor?
Discussion, yes.
I see no harm in supporting this.
Okay.
None at all. The family desperately wants it, the neighbors support it as well. So
Okay.
with no liability, and it's being practiced in the county, I say to my colleagues, please, let's go forward and do this.
Okay, any other discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm just concerned that it will give a false sense of security, that's all. I've seen places with them and without them, so it's not a strong feeling either way.
Yeah. Any other discussion? My sentiments are actually similar. I do have concerns. I tend to try to rely on the experts, and I think the experts would tell us, be careful with this. It may not be the way to go. However, I feel like in these situations when it's very close to home, children with disabilities, I think the best expert, I guess, would be the parent involved, and I'd have to give some deference to that. So I think with all the right warnings, hopefully it can have a positive impact and not a negative one. Do I have a motion on this item?
Well,
Motion to approve.
we didn't motion the first one. So
Yeah,
now
we-
I'm confused.
Well, the first one is a status report. This is, I mean, I guess we need a motion to allow this new process.
I'm looking for some direction on
Yeah.
this. And whether you're okay with establishing the use of these forms. I mean, it's not I would hate to say no liability. Liability could attach. There are some obligations that we are undertaking, so I am looking for that formal direction from you all.
Yeah, the only way I could support it is if the forms that were provided are part of the process, so that we can document it well. So,
Okay. So looking for a motion to approve the issuance of these signs using the forms prepared and recommended by staff.
Motion to approve.
Second. All right,
May I add a comment?
sure.
We have a motion, but
No second.
nothing against our attorney's advice, but the argument was presented in the negative. And there is so much positive to be presented as well. The Federal Highway Authority administration gave an argument that said all signs make you numb after a while. But they never gave an actual treatise or white paper or description of, they just said, oh, signs may make you numb. But at the same time, when you asked neighbors, parents of people that have disabilities, they said they're a definite advantage to have these signs. Again, they do no harm. They can be moved when the parent doesn't want them. And the release is basically a release form.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's
I hear you.
a little more,
We had
and that's all.
a motion. Commissioner has stated his case. I still have not heard a second on that motion. So I believe the direction to staff is that we will not be allowing these at this time. Thank you. Item C, discussion of a revised draft action plan.
Mayor, if you recall, initially on February the 14th, the draft action plan was given to the commission. It incorporated all the comments we received from the CCR, from the neighborhood council, and also as a result of the 3-day strategic planning that you guys held in December and January. In April the 2nd, we had a special meeting where the commission reviewed this action plan in detail. You provided some comments. We incorporated the comments into the action plan. You have made the suggestion, Mayor, to make the completed item as a separate list. So right now, you have 2 lists provided to you. One list is the completed list, and one list is the open items. So we think we took care of all your comments. Hopefully you had some time to review and provide any additional comments if you have, or we missed something. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I'm just excited to see that there's already a completed list before we've even approved the list. So, good work by staff. Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
greatly improved, and I think we're coming into a state of reality here as to what we can't do. I have a few comments on the dates. I'm not even going to make them because I'm just pleased with the way it's kind of turned out. I do have a couple of very basic comments under item D6, which pertains to the mainly to the Turnbull Creek. I know we're going to discuss this later, but I think that committee should be extended with possibly some changes in it.
Okay.
We had our discussion on the Volusia County flood plan, and that's really going to make our job a lot easier when it comes down to a couple of these tasks that relate to our proposed improvements and our proposed ordinances. The last comment I have is F under UC. I would like to see, we discussed it briefly, but I would like to see us add just a little category where we coordinate with the UC on some grant applications. Because there could be some things that we're missing and they're not thinking of, and if we work together, such as converting to LED lighting at the sports complex, we may stand a better chance of getting some grants. So just to add that in as a task under the other ones there, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Other than that, I think this is really a good document.
I think that's a good suggestion on that one item. Any other comments on this item? If not, I do think we need to do a formal approval for staff on this one as well. So I'll be looking for a motion to approve. Yes.
Apologize. I was looking for it and I can't find it. I know that one of the items is to look at possible east-west connectors, and I can't find exactly where that's at.
East-west connector of,
South of 4040, State Road 44.
44.
that one is on the, if you recall, that was on the half-cent sales tax.
Well, okay, but I think
mean,
I
it doesn't
understand
say-
what,
It just says connection between Mission and Corbin Park.
But it was in the strategic plan 2 years ago. So where, as I'm sure the mayor's commented before, he was surprised how slow some things move sometimes. I think that feasibility study should be something that we go ahead and if we're going to have to go out for RFP, or if we're going to have to do something along those lines to contract with somebody, I think we certainly can start that. I don't want to wait until after the sales tax passes or doesn't pass, and then go back and say, okay, now we can start the process. I think certainly we can start looking at that at this time and be ready and prepared depending, and make that decision once the voters have said one way or the other. But that was something that we had 2 years ago on the strategic planning session.
yeah,
So
And-
it's item A11.
Okay.
And if you recall too, is we're coming back in May for the
Page
roadway
776.
transportation plan.
Yes.
So that has the project that you mentioned on it as well.
it's confusing. It doesn't actually.
It's
It
the
might not be
draft.
listed specifically in this one, but it's in the roadway transportation plan.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think they consolidated the whole, rather than listing all these elements of the plan, just this local roadway network plan to the city commission, which I think is, there's a transportation workshop scheduled in May, I believe.
Is it May 21st? 28th.
28th. You know, it's something that we've been talking about for 2 years, and waiting, I mean, I read an article in the paper the other day where we postponed all of our sidewalks until after the half-cent sales tax goes to a vote. You know, I think that's wrong. I think if they were in the budget and we had planned on them ahead of time, we should go ahead and proceed with some things and not be contingent on whether or not the sales tax passes or not. I'd just like to see it at least get started a little quicker. If we're going to have to go out for bid for something or do an RFP, I think that we should be in the process of preparing that for now, so that if on May the 28th, then at least we can hit the ground running.
Commissioner Hartman, the sidewalk you mentioned, the master plan that we have, it was all completed. The sidewalks on that list, it's a new list, so it's not in the budget, so we have to budget for it. That's why we figured if we use the half-cent sales tax, at least we have some funding for it to do it. So if we have the funding, it would be done.
So all the money that we budgeted in this year's budget, 1920, has been spent on the
The
sidewalk?
sidewalk that it's budgeted on this budget, it's for maintenance. There is no,
Okay,
the item that she has, it's maintenance of sidewalk, not a new sidewalk.
all right.
Mayor, if I may comment.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartman. Yeah, I think what I want to add to that is I don't want that local road work program getting convoluted or tied to the half-cent sales tax. This was something we discussed way before the half-cent sales tax. It should be here regardless if the half-cent sales tax passes. I I don't want to see it get lost if the half-cent sale, it's not contingent upon the half-cent sales tax. That was simply a possible funding source. So I want to make sure that it is clearly defined in the strategic goals and not just attached to the half-cent sales tax.
You'd be able to discuss that in detail at the May 28th, and we could move forward with that if that's what you wanted.
Well, I think it was in the strategic plan. I just don't know if somehow it has seemed to lost its way during the half-cent sales tax discussion, if it got moved from the strategic plan over to the half-cent sales tax. So
Yeah,
it's
here. I mean,
right, and
it's-
we'll address that. We can address
Yeah.
that at the
Yeah.
transportation workshop. But I want to be on record as stating as much that idea and concept is not contingent on the half-cent sales tax. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
It's here, and it was in last year's strategic plan, and nothing has been done about it. So, it says that it's scheduled, but I think that we should be further along, or we should be at least in a position that if and when sales tax, however we decide to fund it, because we're also into the budget cycle, that we should have an idea on where we're going to go with this. We keep stacking stuff up, and, it just gets pushed further and further back.
Yeah.
I brought it up when I got elected, and I'm looking at reelection next year. So it'll be 4 years, and we haven't even said, we're going to fund a study to see whether it's feasible or not. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Last year, I wasn't here, but I remember standing at that podium and asking why there was no capital improvement programs budgeted for this year. I think that's your answer. It simply wasn't budgeted in for last year. I agree completely with both of my commissioners down there that the half-cent sales tax is, I hate to call it a wish list, but we should be prepared to proceed with our program one way or the other. And that is budgetary at this time.
So I think all good points have been made. As I reviewed this when we first started this process, I think I said this at the Brandon Center on day one when we started this. As I looked back over the last 12 strategic plans, I could find traces of the same things all the way through. The relationship with the UC has been on that list for, 15 years or so. I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but so I hear you. I think that's a challenge that we're addressing. And as far as what Commissioner McGuirk said, remember saying the same thing when we talked about it. The sales tax to me is a funding mechanism. What we need to do here, we need to have a plan for that. And then if windfalls like the sales tax come, then we can accelerate that plan. But we can't not have a plan because we don't have funding, and we shouldn't be making a plan just because we're going to get funding. We should have a plan, and then we should be seeking funding, and that should be grants, that should be tax revenue, that should be whatever those sources are, but we need a long-term plan, not just on this particular transportation issue, but on many of our issues, parking, other things. I think that's the question is how many workshops, how many things can we do? This one is at the May workshop. So I think when we talked about it, if I recall, the thought was that May wasn't delaying it so long, then we would at least have the knowledge of what would happen with the sales tax, but it was before the budget had been approved, so we could be in a position of having the most knowledge of what funding might be available in the upcoming year to address this. If we start talking about it now, we're going to go back to, well, it depends on if the sales tax passes. I mean, that's where that conversation will lead every single time. So I think that's the sweet spot of getting it done in May. I think it was what we had initially talked about at some point, I recall. So, but your frustrations are noted. I genuinely lost track of if we had a motion to approve this or not. I don't
We
believe that we
do
did.
not, but I would
don't
be
believe we
more
did.
than happy to make one.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the strategic action plan with the one minor change being under F, UC partnership. Second item, that we add an additional task in there to coordinate grant applications for utility-related projects.
Second.
Any other discussion on this item? Johnny?
Commissioner Sachs,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
No.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Like all good plans, this one's going to change. I think we should also challenge staff to, we get routine updates of this. And maybe we have a time when we dedicate to, hey, what's on the list, what needs to change in priorities, et cetera, because we have to respond to current events. Item 8A, ordinances, second readings and public hearing. Conduct the second reading and public hearing of an ordinance, which if adopted would approve an amendment to the FY 18-19 budget. City Attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 16-19, an ordinance amending budget ordinance number 5218, 5418, 5718, 0119, 819, and 1119. Current expenses and capital outlay required for the fiscal year 2018-2019, providing for the reversion of unencumbered funds, providing for public hearing, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Before we start, this is our new finance director's first budget amendment here.
Yes.
Probably not your first one in your career. Got
No,
a
it is not.
long and illustrious career in Volusia County. I think a quick stint over in Mount Dora, I believe it was.
Correct.
But we're excited to have you on board, excited to have you join the team. I would ask, as someone who's stepped into finance roles before, grace periods are to be expected. Things that he may bring forward over the next few months. Remember, he's the messenger. I don't expect a bunch of things to come out, but just remember that he will be bringing us progress. So with that, John, please.
Yes, Mayor, Commission. This budget amendment was put together by your interim finance director, and I just want to highlight some issues that were brought up in the prior ordinances that were brought before the commission. There was a change to some revenues on a CDBG grant that was not included as part of intergovernmental revenue on the initial budget. Then on your 27th Avenue Park project funded, due to CIP scheduling, we needed to transfer money over from our prior year to the current fiscal year, and this budget amendment accounts for that. Then in your 2005 general obligation bond fund, we had to adjust for actual tax revenues received, so we're adjusting the budget for that. Then on your community redevelopment fund, there was a transposition error in the budget, and that's being corrected. And then finally, for the capital projects fund, there was a budget transfer needed for appropriated reserves, and there was an omitted purchase order from the prior year that wasn't part of the carry forward to fiscal year 18-19. So in total, I'm going to go through the funds that were affected. For the general fund, your budget has a net change of $500,494, bringing the total amended general fund budget to $30,008,191. Then for your debt service 2005 general obligation bond fund, there's a decrease of $53,066, bringing the overall fund budget to $1,179,431. Then in your community redevelopment fund, on that transposition error, we're reducing it by $450 to a total of $617,272. And finally, on your capital projects fund, it's being increased by $4,625, bringing the total fund budget to $1,303,306. If there's any other questions on this ordinance, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions from the commission for staff? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the, sure. On this particular item, yes, ma'am, yeah. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 16-19?
So moved.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs.
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Ordinance number 21-19, conduct the first reading and transmittal public hearing of an ordinance which, if adopted, would amend the City of New Smyrna Beach Comp Plan Element 1 introduction, or I, introduction, and Element 9, intergovernmental coordination. The city attorney read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 2119, an ordinance amending the city comprehensive plan, amending element 1 introduction and element 11 intergovernmental coordination, providing for public hearing, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This is the first of 12 elements or chapters in our comprehensive plan that we will be updating over the next 8 months or so. This is a very minor update, which I'll get to in just a minute, but I'd like to give just a brief overview of what we're doing and why we're doing it before we get back to that. At least every 7 years, cities must determine whether the need exists to amend the comprehensive plan to reflect changes in state requirements. Staff did this evaluation in 2018 and notified the state, as we're required to, that amendments to the comp plan are necessary. The coastal element of our comprehensive plan was then updated and adopted by the City Commission in March of 2018. That update got us off the clock, so to speak, as far as meeting the state mandate to update our comprehensive plan. However, we still need to finish the job of updating the remaining sections of the plan, which is what we intend to do over the next 8 months. So by doing so, it keeps us eligible for grant opportunities, ability to impose impact fees, consistency with our LDR, and things of that nature. So our goal for this update cycle is to update the comp plan to address changes in state requirements as well as changes in local conditions. It's not intended to be a major policy update. Although it would incorporate policy changes that the Commission has directed or will be directing over the course of this year. Our approach is to bring 1 or 2 elements first to the Planning and Zoning Board and then to the City Commission, to kind of do one at a time rather than inundate you with huge volumes of material. The complete tentative schedule is in your agenda packet, but the goal would be to be complete by the end of this calendar year. So turning our attention to this minor update of just the introduction to the comp plan as well as the intergovernmental coordination element, again, no major changes. The most significant is probably the recognition of the ISBA as existing and now being part of our comprehensive plan. Just some text amendments. In the intergovernmental coordination, this is really identifies all the other agencies and the interactions that we have as far as utilities, police, fire, economic development, beach management, and it was just dated, and a lot of that has been brought up to date, essentially. At the April 1st Planning and Zoning Board meeting, the board voted 4-0 to recommend the City Commission approve the requested comp plan updates. Staff recommends the City Commission conduct a public hearing and approve the first reading of the proposed amendments. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions of Brian on his report on this item? Not, we'll open the public hearing. Any members of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the transmittal of ordinance number 21-19 to the reviewing agencies?
So move.
Second.
City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk.
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Ordinance number 21-19 is approved for transmittal to the reviewing agencies. Thank you, Brian. There was a lot of work on that. That was good. Ordinance 22-19, conduct the first reading and first of 2 required public hearings of an ordinance which, if adopted, would amend the LDRs et cetera, et cetera. City Attorney, read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 22-19, an ordinance amending the city land development regulations, amending Article 5, Section 50402, I-1 Light Industrial District to add assembly as a special exception, providing for codification, providing for public hearing, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Staff.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, this is a request for approval of text amendments to the city's land development regulations, adding an assembly use to, as a special exception in the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. The applicant is Mr. Randy McHenry. He's here tonight. He currently owns a large warehouse structure at 721 Palmetto Street that was constructed around 1914. It's currently located in the I-1 Industrial District. The building's been used in different ways over the years, including things like citrus packing, a shipping facility, a furniture store, and staff has met with the owners on several occasions about possibly what to do with the building next. The owners informed staff that they would like to use the building for assembly purposes, which would include things like weddings, musical and theatrical concerts, ballroom dance studio with instruction, dance competitions, things of that nature. That assembly is not a permitted use in the I-1 district. So staff looked at various options for how that could be requested of the commission, and what we recommended is creating a special exception in the I-1 zoning district would be the most appropriate way of making that request. So what's before you is a text amendment that would add assembly being an event location or facility for the assembly of people, and for the following specific types: art shows and exhibits, concert or theatrical plays and musicals, dance studios including instruction and competitions, wedding or public and private event venue. In doing so, we looked at a number of limits that would be requirements if the special exception was met. I'm going to go over those briefly here. First, the maximum number of attendees at one event is 750. That was set as really a cap on just kind of looking at the overall scale of an event, just to minimize potential adverse impacts for events that are held near neighborhoods and things of that nature. Second, the parking is a minimum of 1 space per 4 attendees. Recorded or live music has to meet our noise ordinance, which is has to be limited to the hour between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. It has to meet the special exception procedural requirements of LDR. Has to have an appropriate site plan submitted and approved by city staff. Alcohol is only to be supplied by a state of Florida alcohol licensed caterer or by a state of Florida special event alcohol permit. If a temporary parking lot is proposed, has to be approved by the city engineer, must adhere to all city adopted building codes, life safety codes, and then finally any other conditions the city commission could impose on that type of facility as a special exception. So just to clarify, any type of restaurant or nightclub would not be a permitted use. Alcohol and food could be served that would have to be in conjunction with a special event under the assembly use. It could not be a standalone restaurant of any nature. At the P&Z meeting on April 1st, the board voted 3-1 to recommend that the city commission approve the requested text amendments. Just one point to clarify, that if this text amendment passed, the next step for the applicant or any applicant would be to go ahead and submit that special exception. That would again come before the city commission. That would be your chance to look at specific site conditions for this exact proposal if it were to come forward. This is just a text amendment to the code to allow the special exception. Staff recommends city commission approval of first reading for the text amendments to the I-1 zoning district. Mayor.
Thank you. Quick question that I had, or just to make sure it's clear, and you said it well, but this applies to more than just the one property of the applicant. This applies to everything in that designation across the city, but it is approved as a special exception. So they would come back in every individual case. They would come back to the commission.
That's correct.
And specific criteria could be attached.
Yes.
And then those special events, would they fall under the purview of needing any kind of special event permit even on top of that? Or would that been kind of a blanket approval if they're within this category?
They would not. If it was part of their permitted use of normal using facility under the terms of special exception, they would not need to go outside of that for a special event permit.
So even though they may have what we would call a special event, I think you even used the term, it's not the special event like the one we approved earlier on consent agenda.
Correct.
Got it. Any other questions of staff on this item?
Yes.
before the public hearing. Go ahead.
The one item I question is the maximum number of people that can be assembled. I know everybody's thinking about this one particular proposed project, but as the mayor mentioned, this applies to all the events, all these uses that could occur anywhere in the LI zone, light industrial zone. And I really don't think that without, it's an arbitrary number, is what I'm saying, and that we don't know if that number would really matter on other properties located in the I-1 zone. We govern the amount of people based on the parking requirements. So I would like to see that particular phrase removed.
Just to that point, Mr. McHenry did state that his maximum was 500. Staff did look at kind of the largest possible. We felt like could be reasonably accommodated, but that number could be adjusted as the commission desires.
Right, but I'm looking beyond this particular proposal, which we have to do because it's the LI zone, and there are other properties available.
Can I speak just for a moment?
No, not yet.
Hang on.
Not-
You're about
you'll-
to have a chance, though. We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify, though. My understanding is, again, that that's a cap. I mean, this may be the point you're trying to make. That's a cap, but everything will come back to us, just as he said, Mr. McHenry would. If this is approved, he'll be coming back. A lower cap could be applied to that particular project. Could a higher cap, though? I mean, let's say some new property came online that we didn't know. Could a higher cap? And if so, then why should we even have that cap? Why wouldn't we just address it on a case-by-case basis?
That's my question. The cap can be discussed at that time. There are some rather large properties in the LI zone that could support a large assembly use.
And it may be perfectly fine.
And they might be
Could
perfectly
Could a higher
fine.
cap be approved if?
My opinion is that if you have the 750, that would be the highest. You could approve lower as a condition, but if you establish the 750,
Yeah, so we're kind of boxing ourselves in some ways.
Correct.
Which is maybe good, maybe bad.
Mayor, if I may ask?
Sure.
Each parcel would have to come to us as for the special exception, which we then, so it's not, as you point out, it is for the light industrial zoning, but each applicant or each person with a piece of property that would want to use one of these new permitted uses has to come before us as a special exception case. And we can deal with each property on a case-by-case basis at that time, correct?
you can attach conditions to address the compatibility issues in the particular area.
And
So
then the
if-
issue with the cap is we can put a maximum cap and then come down. But if we put the maximum cap, is that relevant? That doesn't,
Then you wouldn't be able to go higher if you found
Right.
some spot in the middle of
We'd
nowhere.
have to go back through this process to go higher. So we're kind of,
right. So it may not even make any sense to put a cap on it. It may make sense simply to just address each issue as it
case by
comes up.
case. I think
And
that
make
was
sure they have
Commissioner Chloe's
room.
point, yeah.
The fire department would have to make sure, there'd have to be parking, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing? All right, we'll now open the public hearing. Now we'd love to hear from you, Mr. McHenry. Please.
If you've discussed it, I have nothing else to say.
All right. We figured it out. All right.
I guess I was a little turned off when you said the word arbitrary, because we've had a lot of people study this. We've had people from the hub out to talk about how many they want. We've had 3 different architects, and I kind of resented that it was an arbitrary number. And so I wanted to address that. There was nothing arbitrary about the number. We have way more, and we talk about 4-to-1 parking, and we have plenty of parking for this issue, for the 750. I doubt we'll ever get to that number, but that was the number that was suggested that we set as a cap. And as far as having them, as you all are probably aware, there's a young couple here that are very involved with a dance school that many hundreds of people have asked me to help get a business started. We plan to have a dance school there, and their business can thrive if they can also have weddings there.
I don't think we need to have them every time there is a wedding, whether they have 50 or 200 people at the wedding, come and have to apply. I think the building could be approved to have weddings, and there's room to have big wedding receptions, and that's the goal of what the assembly has to be for.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yes.
Sure.
First, I want to announce that I did inspect the property. I did meet with Mr. McHenry out there and looked it over. My interest has nothing to do with your property. The LI zone is the entire railroad property that extends all the way from 10th up to 44. Why would we want to cap any large development on there if somebody came through with a use that was very advantageous to the city? I don't think we would. That's the only reason. Has nothing to do with your proposed use
Yeah.
at all.
At the scale of the city, the 750 number becomes a bit more arbitrary. In your case, it was scientific.
Okay.
Any other members of the public wish to speak on this item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any other discussion by the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
John, any call the roll?
Oh, wait a second.
Discussion, all right, please.
I would offer an amendment to strike the limit, the maximum occupancy limit.
I'll amend my motion to strike the maximum occupancy.
Thank you.
Does the seconder accept the amendment?
I'll accept it.
Okay. So to be clear, we have a motion to approve ordinance 22-19 on first reading and the first of two required. And no, this is the first reading. It's confusing because it's under second reading, but this is the first reading.
It's a public
Yeah.
hearing. State statute requires 2 public hearings when you're changing a use in a zoning district, so we moved it to the public hearing section.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a motion, but with the one amendment or the one clarification to remove that maximum of 750, which is item F1. We'll strike section F1. City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs.
No.
Say again, sir.
No.
No.
Thank you. Commissioner McGuirk,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. Ordinance 22-19 is approved on first reading and first of two required public hearings. If, in the second reading and the final public hearing will be held at the regular meeting on May 14th. All right, item D, grievance of CDBG funding 2017-2018 Pettus Park Tennis / Pickleball Court Project. City Commission will now conduct a public hearing. I believe first we'll hear from Reverend Dove. I think I saw him back there. So this is a quasi-judicial, so we're going to go through the swearing-in process. City Attorney will swear in any witnesses.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. You didn't have to do it. Me and my wife moved here about 5 years ago, and we love New Smyrna. We think it's the best thing happening. Yeah, I love it. I love the people. This is a great place to be. But when we came, we saw some things that were not right. And so a lot of times, fresh eyes always have, I think, a better view than people who've been somewhere a long time. And so we started noticing things like the Boys and Girls Club. People were complaining to me that it was mold in the building. And so I came to complain to the commission, and so eventually the building was sold to the Boys and Girls Club. I thought that was great. Also, it came to my attention about the Babe James Summer Youth Work Program, where local kids in the community were not in the program, right? And so I thought that was a two-way street from me as a leader and the city. We worked together, we got it done, more kids than ever. Then I noticed I work with Faith on the community garden. And so I've been a partner with the city in trying to make this city a better place. There's no doubt about it, right? Me and the chief at work are well together. And everybody know gentrification is happening right now on the west side. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Where the west side was predominantly black, now it's shifting. And I would say it's probably 50-50, right? Is it intentional? Well, you know, we own about $400,000 worth of property over on the west side. My church does. And we're getting constant letters from investors and phone calls wanting to buy property. And so it doesn't look right to me that the CDBG committee for 4 months, and I emailed everybody the minutes, for 4 months talked about repaving, paving and resurfacing the tennis court at Pettis Park. There was never any mention of pickleball, never, until the last meeting. As a matter of fact, the meeting that they voted was the meeting it came up. If you go back in the minutes, you'll see it said resurfacing of courts. Every minute I have says that except the last one. That becomes problematic because when does the community have input? Or when are we informed or asked that this project is about to take place? It never happened. It's not fair. And so I'm saying that the CDGB board, and there are some people on that board I respect to the highest, God knows I do. I have a member on that board. And so for me to say what I'm saying kind of risks my relationship with her. But I think what I'm saying is that the community input, we are not allowing people input on decisions that are being made on the west side, and it's not fair. If you read the minutes when it was approved, this is what it said. It was suggested by staff. And to me, that's problematic. And so I'm gonna move off of it. I'm gonna go to the solutions. Okay, I reached out to Ms. Banks. We had a meeting set. The meetings were canceled by the city manager. I was ready to resolve it. I had some things I wanted to suggest that we could do real quickly to kind of move past it. She canceled the meeting, right? Then she sent me an email saying, well, we may be able to do this. Well, to me, that wasn't firm enough. And so these are the things that I asked for. I asked that, number one, that someone teach pickleball to people who don't know how to play pickleball. I think that's a simple fix. Two, I asked that somebody needs to purchase paddles and balls for the people on the west side, and I know the mayor say, oh, it's affordable. Well, we disagree with that. When you living below the poverty level, nothing is affordable. And so I told Mr. Hartman, and I asked Mr. Harrell, could there be a possibility where paddles and balls can be at the Black Heritage Museum? He said, of course, right? And all that would take is a sign to say, look, this is where the paddles are. And I know it sounds small to some, but this is a reoccurrence on the west side where the city does what they want to do without real good input from the leaders. In the grant that y'all wrote for the CDBG, it talked about 5 churches that will benefit from pickleball. I never got a call to even come to the ribbon cutting. Mr. Harold is probably he's a giant, and he right down the street, he never got a call. You got local ministers, they never got a call. And so what I'm saying, let's please, let us be leaders in our community. Invite us to the table, invite us to the conversation. If Ms. Banks sent out a lot of emails in reference to community activities, which is fine. But why can't the CDBG meeting be in those emails? And so those are the suggestions that I bring to the table. And I also, on record, is going to accept the challenge from the mayor to beat up on him in pickleball.
You got it.
And trust me, this is more of a principle thing for me. Like, it's more principle in that we could do better in collaborating what's going on. If Mr. Harold, who's one block down from the pickleball court, never knew that was coming, that's problematic. And so I'm asking the city to please work with us over there. There are people who are living below the poverty level. We don't play pickleball. We do play basketball. And to choose, that's I don't want us getting into who, what city person suggested that pickleball go there. But you got 8 pickleball courts in New Smyrna already. How many more you need? We don't need no more. They turned the one on Oak Street, took the basketball goal down from there, made pickleball. So again, thank you. And I want to go on record to thank the chief for your contribution to save our daughters and sons again. And I'm going to get my kids out there to play pickleball. Well, let's do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick message.
So, yeah, we've got any questions for Reverend Dove? Stick around. We got to go through a whole process, but we'll get it done quick.
Just a brief question.
Sure.
Thank you, Reverend Dove. I have 2 items that you wanted. I didn't know if I missed one. It was the teaching pickleball classes and having paddles and balls. Was there a third issue I wasn't clear on?
No, right. So the input. So when Ms. Banks and the committee meet, I think it's appropriate to send an email to the same email list that she has, saying that we're having the CDBG meeting. I think that's only fair. I think when I first got here, they should send letters to the churches that the meeting was taking place. And so if that's the case, we can participate in the process a little better.
Okay, so the churches should get emails or notifications of the CBGD meetings?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate that.
Any other questions for Reverend Dove? I'd like to first point out that you haven't seen me play pickleball yet. I may be a ringer. You don't know. I've never played. I've never played. So we're gonna find out together how good or bad we are, and I look forward to it. I've heard these 3 things. I think these 3 things are doable or achievable. We're going to hear from city staff here in a minute and any members of the public that wish to speak. On that last item, specifically talking about involvement, I can tell you that's on my radar. And we were meeting, trying to figure out what the topic was. I've got the notes here, but we were meeting on, I think it was something to do with the upcoming affordable housing. And Tony was in the meeting, and I asked Tony, I said, hey, have we talked to, I know we've talked to the residents in the building, I said, but have we talked to the Ministerial Alliance? I'd like to have their thoughts. What are we missing from here? What are the thoughts from that community on this? And so I got a whole write-up here on the notes. So I certainly agree. On that particular item, I think the process, there's the CDBG meeting, then that comes to the commission. So I think we can certainly make sure that communication loop is better. So I look forward to improving that. I think we now will hear from the City Community Resource Coordinator, Ms. Banks, if you have any comments or anything to clarify or add to that. Any of those items that we've already addressed or in the process of addressing that we can just report on tonight?
Quickly, let me swear you in. Please
Yeah,
state your
sorry.
name for the record.
Donna Graybanks.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Banks, please state your educational background and professional background.
I've had 25 years in community development in Volusia County, starting over in DeLand, and then coming here to New Smyrna.
Okay, does any member of the audience or commission wish to question Ms. Banks on her professional qualifications? If not, any objections from the commission on qualifying her as an expert witness in the area of CDBG funding?
Oh, and CDBG.
Only only CDBG, all right.
And 20 years in the CDBG.
Yeah. No objections. She's determined to be an expert witness in CDBG funding and qualified to give opinion testimony. Are you familiar with your grievance?
Yes, I am. I have a short video I'd like to show you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Johnny, could you put that for me?
I think he's trying to get it played now.
It's very short. So in the first slide, you can see how the tennis courts were declining. Can you see all the dark areas around the tennis court? And that's circa 2014. Hold on, Johnny. Go back a minute. 2014-15, our offices were in the park. If you see the four little portals up there, our offices were in Pettis Park at the time the tennis courts were declining. We were in Pettis Park for 6 months until the Alonzo Babe James Center was renovated. And those 6 months we were in a park, I only saw one person play tennis. And that particular gentleman was Alonzo Babe James' grandson. And then I did see a group of people from the Boys and Girls Club try to do tennis court lessons, but couldn't because the courts were so terrible. And then, go ahead, Johnny, fast forward. We had the 2 major hurricanes, which was Irma and Matthew. And as you can see, the tennis courts really declined, had something that looks like mold and very huge cracks. So at that point, they were not able to be used at all. And at the time the project was discussed, and we started discussing the overall budget in 2016, the tennis courts were always on the project list, and he's correct. But we also knew that it was underutilized, way underutilized. And I believe sometime in February 2017, Mr. Jim from the Pickleball Club came to me and said, we need more places to play. And at that point, I went to the advisory board and I said to them, this is what's going to come to you, but I can't bring it to you because it has to come from the city manager. She in turn said, ask them if they would consider pickleball, right? I did, and it was close to the point where we were about to do the tennis courts, but they had no problem with it because the first thing we said to them was, if you're bringing pickleball into the community, you must introduce it into the community. That was not something that we never neglected to say to them. And if Mr. Jim was here, he would tell you that I told him that that was one of the things he would have to do. He said that his group would purchase the paddle, do what they had to do to make sure that the kids and the community learned about pickleball. So in that regard, Reverend Dove is wrong. We were very concerned about the fact that pickleball wasn't introduced, but had to be into the community. And so the CDBG board is no different than any other city board, and we follow the rules and the regulations of the boards. They're notified on the website, and whatever other way we do it here in the city. Now, I don't mind going out and being a little different and having to send notifications to the churches. When he first came here, the notifications we gave were because we were doing public service funding. And so the public service funding was money that can be given to a 501c3 to do projects in the community. So it was a point of CDBG having to go to all the 501c3s, the churches, and give them the opportunity to give a program, which is 15% of the funding that we got. and bring a program in. Those programs failed for many reasons, mostly because the last one we had to show, the parents had to show how much money the house made. And it was really, really hard to get that information back. So we had to disband that program. But, and as far as notification is concerned, I have 7 long-term residents on the CDBG board from various different backgrounds. They all belong to all the different other organizations, NAACP, churches. And it's not, it's their responsibility as an advisory board to make sure that they administer information to the community. Now, we can do something different, and I don't mind doing anything different, but I mind being told that I'm doing something wrong, and I don't think we did anything wrong. Johnny, can you come back and show everyone what it looks like right now? And you saw what it did look like, and this is what it looks like now. I have any questions you would like.
Okay, does any member of the commission wish to question Ms. Banks on her testimony?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Banks, was it not the intention, or it was perceived by me, that we were to resurface the tennis courts, which were barely used, and make them multi-purpose courts? My hope would have been that we would actually bring more sports to the neighborhood instead of taking away the sports, because I have seen dual-purpose tennis courts.
Well, that's what it did, sir. It went from tennis court to pickleball.
No,
There's a whole tennis court there,
What I'm
and then there's a
saying is-
pickleball court there.
What I'm saying is make one court and use it for both sports. That's not possible?
That was the other thing that the CDBG board didn't want to happen. They didn't want tennis to be taken out of the tennis courts, taken out of the tennis court area. So we decided to have one full tennis court and then pickleball on the other side.
And
Even though it might have been underutilized, it was important to them to keep it. So
I greatly appreciate that we're renourishing the whole park, and I appreciate your efforts as well. I just feel like sometimes when we try to help people, we may stumble along the way. And-
absolutely.
And it's possible that we did. And when I saw the nice new courts, I said, very nice. And then I looked to the right and saw the condition of what is more probably played more is the basketball court. But I
Right,
do see-
and I agree with that. We had a point of funding of $50,000. That court is not regulation anything.
Yes,
It's not regulation high school, it's not regulation MBA, it's not regulation college. So it has to be completely taken up.
Yes.
So we have agreed, the advisory board has agreed to take all the money for next year to completely redo the basketball court. Now, there were other things that could have come first, right? But we decided that the playground was more important for the children, which was falling apart. That goes in the ground August 1st. So everything has a priority granted, but every priority comes with money. And so if you don't have the money to do it right, why do it? So now we have the money to do it right, and that funding will be available October 1st.
And we're looking to make them regulation-sized court,
It's going to be high school regulation.
high school regulation.
That was discussed at the last, in depth, at the last 2 CDBG meetings that I attended as the only member of the public that was there. And that was discussed in depth, and they are very adamant that the courts be regulation sized. Now they're not. So, yeah. Any other questions for Ms. Banks?
I just want to
Go ahead.
just comment. Thank you for coming tonight
No
and
problem.
sharing the process of it. I know that when we deal with public monies, it's a lot more complicated
It
than what
is.
we're used to in our in the private sector or in our personal homes. So again, I appreciate everything that's been done, and I think that we can, work together at accommodating what the CDBG
Right.
is trying to accomplish, and at the same time, the West Side community also. So I look forward to working better on our part too at the commission level to be able to make sure we facilitate what is the best thing that's going on. But I also do want to recognize that there is a board. The board did make a decision.
Exactly.
And so it wasn't the city or the commission necessarily. So there's a lot of different people involved in this. And I think that we can work through problems in the future so this doesn't continue.
And the CDBG board meetings are open to the public, and we more than welcome anyone who has a question about any kind of project that we're working on.
Thank you, Ms. Banks.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Excuse me. And for Reverend Dove, I hope to someday have a game of horse with you on those new basketball courts. I'm not very good at dribbling, so I think that might be the appropriate game.
He would
Hey, come on. Hey, what are you saying?
Can I say one thing, sir?
We've got, hang on, I got a whole process I got to go through, but you're on it. So, we're now going to hear from members of the public that wish to testify on this grievance, either for or against. Any members of the public that would wish to speak on this item, Ms. March? And again, they're going to have to go through the swearing-in process.
Please state your name.
Christina March.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you.
I'm in support of it. I don't know what happened back then, but it sounded like she was actually defending what happened. I would just hope going forward there's more accountability as far as reaching out to the public and making sure it reaches everybody it affects. I don't think that happened, but I wasn't there, so that's all.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission or Reverend Dove wish to question Ms. March on her testimony? No questions. Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak on this item? Okay. Any closing remarks, Reverend Dove?
Just to, this is getting interesting because Ms. Banks just testified to the fact that the board did not make the decision, that the decision was directed from the city manager. And I want you to listen to the federal guidelines coming from HUD. Per HUD regulation, the CDGB funds must be used to benefit low and moderate income individuals. That's problematic. I'm telling you now, this is problematic for me because she just admitted on record that the city manager instructed her to tell the board to do pickleball at $40,000. That's, to me, it sounds like a violation of HUD because it's not being used by low and moderate income people. That's problematic. If the pickleball people, they're not, man, trust me, them people got money. And so that's not fair. And so the city manager should not be in the business of making recommendations to the CDGB board. That's not fair. That takes away the community input. So at the last minute, she comes in and say, okay, no, change that. That means that nobody on the board knew at that very time that they were going to be changed to pickleball. That's problematic, y'all. It's not fair. It's not fair to the process. It's all about the process, right? And so if she's going to dictate the process, why have the committee? And so that's I don't think it's right. And so.
I think that was an amen.
No, ma'am, I'm not sitting down. This is my time to speak.
All right.
And so this is my right. And so, sir, and so this is what this does, though. It drives a wedge between the black community. Lack of communication drives a wedge. And we need to get beyond that. We need to have Ms. Banks make sure she notify the public when CDBG meetings are going to take place and when decisions are made. I'm done.
You are. We can have your closing remarks from the city as well. Absolutely. To be clear, though, to address that, what I heard was, I believe the city manager asked the CDBG to consider, was what I heard. We can go back and check the footage, but
right. So I think that if I would never want to make a wedge between the community, right? And so if the only thing that really makes that different are the lines. So if it is the community's will and if they want to have the lines removed and the court the net removed, then that would be something that you guys have to consider. I mean, I think that we should learn pickleball. I think it's easier for the kids, and the tennis court was underutilized. But
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. I also, you missed it, Reverend Dove, I meant to mention earlier, but we did literally at this meeting on the consent agenda approve the funding for the basketball and for the playground equipment at Pettis Park. So, all right, well, public hearing is now closed, so everyone has said their piece. We'll now hear from the city commission. We'll consider the grievance. What I heard was teaching pickleball, which I think I read in here that we have members of the pickleball club in New Smyrna that are willing to do that, willing to teach lessons, set up time where they teach lessons, provide paddles, which I think the city, and if not, I personally would be willing to purchase some paddles to put at the museum, and then expanding our outreach for that CDBG meeting. My understanding is it's noticed just like every other public meeting that we have, P&Z, the meeting tonight, et cetera. I think they're all noticed identically, but we can certainly investigate that. And if there's additional interested parties to be added to an email list, I don't see that as particularly problematic. To be clear, so there's a formal grievance filed. If we pursued those three items as a city, Reverend Dove, does that address the formal grievance?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I'd be looking for a motion, and if I can get a motion in a second, we can have some more discussion if needed, but I'd be looking for a motion to address this grievance that's brought forward by attaining to those three items recommended by Reverend Dove.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Reverend Dove. I think the root of the problem goes back to something you alluded to, in that it was like a surprise when you heard what was going on. I've felt the same way on any number of issues, and I've expressed it rather clearly in my portion. I think that the staff is making improvements to get notifications out on projects like this farther ahead of time, so you can get realistic public comments to it. And I will continue to push that those notifications go out. If it's above the law or above the minimum necessary to meet the law, it's a better way to put it, I think we should do that. So notification of those meetings, if there's a standard email that goes out, just include that in there. It can never hurt to get more notifications. I think everything that was done by staff regarding the notifications in the meetings was fine. I don't like the fact that a project, especially one of that scope, kind of came to that committee at the last minute. It's kind of hard for any committee that's of lay people or even professional people to say no to a project to improve an area when they don't really have the time to think about it. I have no problem with the decision that was made, but I just think the notification should be improved. And if you don't see a change, you know how to get a hold of me.
Yes, sir. Okay. Any other discussion on this item?
So for the record, I purchased paddles and balls, and they're at the Boys and Girls Club.
Awesome.
So if you
Thank
or the
you.
Reverend Dove need a set of paddles for your game, they're over at the Boys and Girls Club. But on another note is I think we witnessed this morning is that communication seems to be a bit of a problem citywide, and it's just not the west side. and it's not beachside. I think that we as a body need to improve our communications to all of our citizenry. So I thank you for your efforts. We certainly all can do a better job, and we all strive to do that. And hopefully, in the future, that will happen. So, thank you.
Well said. With that, Johnny, call the roll.
Commissioner Sachs.
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hartman.
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi.
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. So, Khaled, whoever is designated by the city manager, but if you please just keep all of us in the loop on as we address those three items. Sounds like the paddles may already be there, but as we get those lessons set up, just keep us in the loop and make sure we're following through on this.
Also, on a side note, I just learned from Nancy Maddox that the city have received paddles as well.
Awesome.
I see them yesterday, so we'll keep you updated.
And thank you, some members of the CDBG board are leaving now. Thank you all for your service and time. Appreciate it. All right, item 9, ordinances, first reading. Hey, Reverend Duff, I have something for you. I won't see you again, so I'm just gonna give it to you now. This is for that sodas thing. All right, ordinances, look at that. That's not a bribe, by the way. It's just, that's a donation to a charity. That is a donation to a legitimate 501c3 charity for children. Ordinance 1919, connect the first reading of an ordinance which, if adopted, would amend the LDR sections 201, et cetera. The city attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 19-19, an ordinance amending the land development regulations, amending Article 2 definitions, Section 201, general definitions, to delete the net land definition and to add new definitions for gross density and net density, and Section 206 wetland protection regulations definitions to revise the wetland definition. Amending Article 5 zoning district, Section 504 district regulations and requirements, subsection 50401 general regulations to revise the density calculation methodology. Amending Article 7 standards for sites with special characteristics, Section 701 sites containing wetlands, subsection 70104 application submittal to add a provision regarding wetland boundaries, providing for codification, providing for public hearing, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Okay, thank you. So, again, this is a first reading. There is no voting to take place as we are slowly kind of adopting as custom. If there's feedback we need to give staff or any items that are particularly concerning, now would be the time to point those out so they can kind of debate them before second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I've received a couple phone calls from people in my district concerning one word in the ordinance, the word preliminary. There is a concern that the word preliminary opens the door to almost anything being allowed to be justifiably exempt from this ordinance. So just a little explanation as to the derivation of that might help out.
The preliminary item that would be exempt is if somebody has submitted a preliminary plat application in advance of the effective date of this ordinance. And a preliminary plat application, it requires a substantial investment by the developer in professional services, surveying, traffic study, preparing the documents, which have everything except the final details in them essentially, and includes a $4,000 application fee that the plans get reviewed by staff, comments get returned. It is called a preliminary plat. That would be the only item of a preliminary nature that we are recommending would be vested, if you will, and there are not many of those under the previous rules before this. We felt like that, given the level of effort and detail that's needed and reliance, that it was appropriate, similar to what we did with the historic tree ordinance, to put those in the system box.
One other clarification, we need
Yes.
direction on P&Z recommended the exclusion under the net acreage definition. It says net acreage consists of the total acreage within a site excluding the following. One of those items is land surface areas below the 100-year floodplain elevation as they exist prior to development. P&Z's recommendation was to strike that, and so we're looking for direction on where the commission, if you want it in or out.
Yeah, good catch. I forgot about that part. Okay. Yes.
Would you like me to
Sure,
go
yeah,
to the
go.
floodplain issue? Okay, just briefly. So the ordinance as drafted includes both wetlands and the floodplain as lands that would be excluded from the net acreage calculation. This was recommended by our consultant. It's also recommended by staff. P&Z felt like it should be excluded. So just, a brief understanding of what that means. Best way to evaluate is think of wetlands and the floodplain as two layers on a map that have a substantial overlap but aren't necessarily identical in the way that they overlap. You can have lands in the floodplain that are not wetlands. You can have wetlands that aren't in the floodplain. So by including both of those, as we viewed them and our consultant did, as kind of part of the same family of natural lands that should be protected. But by including both of those, is you have the potential on a project where more lands could be excluded from the net density, and therefore you'd result in a lower density project. The floodplain can be left in the ordinance. It could be removed. If it is removed, it could be revisited at a later date, either through the density or by a more direct modification of our floodplain ordinance if a higher level of protection was desired. So this isn't the only chance that you would have to enact regulation protecting your floodplain. But that was our mindset, that was in the same family. We didn't see, when we looked at other projects, as well as other jurisdictions that have done this, a substantial impact, but it would potentially be a little bit more.
Okay. And again, not voting tonight, but we do need to give staff some guidance. I had the same concerns on the preliminary. I am okay with leaving the floodplain language as recommended by staff, as was originally included.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, you have one more voice that's concerned about the language of preliminary. I could draw on a napkin a preliminary sketch, and that would cost me about 20 cents.
But it wouldn't qualify for that, though. That's a formal
You have to
process.
submit all the, you have to do a pre-application meeting for a preliminary plat, hire the consultants, do the due diligence, submit the documents, and pay the fee. So just calling a plan preliminary and submitting it doesn't get it in.
I'm still uncomfortable because can't you not change elevations, take out trees, make water bodies in a preliminary plat and say, oh, I changed my mind?
Somebody could change a final until it's actually approved, or even after it's approved, until something gets built, it could be changed.
I mean, in my simple way of thinking about it, we're kind of limiting ourselves as to what we can regulate under the wetland calculation. It gives us less of a body to pick from. So that's my concern. Thanks.
Okay. Just give your indication on the floodplain, going with the P&Z recommendation of striking that language or leaving it in as staff suggested, or originally submitted, I'll say.
I would leave that language in.
Okay. Did you address that topic? Would you like to give direction on that real quick?
I think most of our comments should come at the public hearing, but yes, at this point, leave it in.
Okay.
And I would also recommend with the preliminary that the commission take a look at section 1008 of our land development ordinance, which defines preliminary. So I would leave that in for now and deal with it at the second. It's
Okay.
one word. Big impact.
Yeah, and we can always make tiny changes like that at second reading, but if we have major things, it's helpful to get it out in this first reading. Any other?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question I have, I guess, both for Brian and City Attorney. If we do not allow calculations of density in the floodplain, what does that do to all of the existing properties that are in the floodplain if someone needed to rebuild there? Because I can look out in this audience and most of the people I see here actually live in the floodplain. And if you are not able to build your home, how does that, what is the actual impact of that?
So this ordinance would have no impact on existing platted lots. I think the situation, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're asking about if somebody has a platted lot and they were rebuilding that house, either through it's demolished or after a storm event. If a house is substantially rebuilt, and these are FEMA regulations now that we're into, is if by 50% or more of it, then it has to come up to current floodplain standards. So those are the rules that applied, previously and will continue for homes that are in the floodplain. 50% or more, you have to meet current floodplain regulations.
Okay, so hold on. You said it doesn't affect it?
This ordinance has no relation to that condition.
So our local ordinance will not affect it, but the FEMA ordinance, federal ordinance, it would affect it by 50% or more?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
guiding document in that situation.
Great. All right, thank you very much.
So I have no issue with the first item that Mr. Colodi brought up.
Preliminary, okay.
Because I think it's consistent with what we did with the tree ordinance. I think that we need to be more consistent with what we do, and that's the language that we used when we redid that ordinance, so I have no problem with it being included in this ordinance. I do have a problem with the 100-year floodplain. I had some discussion about floodplain, flood zone, so I just need more information about that. So if sometime within the next 2 weeks, I'll probably be giving you a call.
Sure.
And if we had some maps that kind of showed that two areas, I think that would be helpful for me, so.
Okay. So I think it's hopefully giving you enough to know, even if we had to tweak both those things at second reading, I think it's not substantive enough that it's a big deal, so we can continue this discussion, but hopefully it's been helpful. The second reading will be held at the regular city commission meeting scheduled for May 14th, 2019. Item B, ordinance 20-19, conduct the first reading of an ordinance which, if adopted, would provide for amending section 4.07 for the police pension plan. City attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 20-19, an ordinance of the City of New Smyrna Beach, amending the City of New Smyrna Beach Police Officers Retirement Plan, amending Section 4.07, supplemental benefit component for special benefits, Chapter 185, share accounts, providing for public hearing, providing for severability, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
Okay. Gentlemen, same thing. Any major concerns to give staff a heads up on before the second reading on this item?
The only thing I would say is that as a member of the pension plan, I kind of had a dual sword here, because we brought this before you. So if that's not going to be a conflict to vote on it, so just for the record, as a plan member.
Okay.
All right.
So
I as well.
between now and the second reading, if we can get clarity for these two on whether or not they can vote. But we're not voting tonight, so we're
Right,
good.
you're members of the pension board, you don't receive benefits under
No.
the retirement plan.
Right, but
Okay.
it was a recommendation from the pension board, so.
Okay, that's not
I
a
think it's
conflict.
fine,
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the second reading for that will be held at the regular city commission meeting scheduled for May 14th, 2019. Next item up, item 10, P&Z board, that was item A. We agreed earlier in the meeting to delay that until the May 14th meeting. So nothing there. Item B, Utilities Commission, accept the voluntary resignation and consider appointing a citizen to fill that term. Do we have a motion to accept the resignation of
So moved.
the member?
Second.
Johnny?
Vice Mayor Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner Colodi,
Yes.
Commissioner Sachs.
Yes.
Commissioner McGuirk.
Yes.
Mayor Owen.
Yes. All right, the resignation is accepted. We have a list of citizens who have submitted volunteer applications. Looking for nominations. We'll start left to right with nominations. We already have the ballots in front of us. If there is more than one nomination, we'll use these ballots. Vice Mayor.
I would nominate Valley Perrine.
Lillian Conrad?
Okay, I have no nomination to add to that list.
Mr. Walter Allen.
Okay, Commissioner Colodi.
Mr. Larry Wilton.
Oh, geez. Divided board. All right, you have the ballot in front of you. If you can fill it out, sign it, pass it to your left. So that was Walter Allen, Lillian Conrad, Valley Perrine, and Larry Wilton. Those are your four options. Don't check any other boxes.
Results of the balloting are as follows. Commissioner Colodi, Larry Wilton, Commissioner Sachs, Walter Allen, Commissioner McGuirk, Lillian Conrad, Vice Mayor Hartman, Valley Perrine, Mayor Owen, Lillian Conrad.
Okay.
That's 2 votes for Lillian Conrad, 1 vote each for Walter Allen, Larry Wilton, and Valley Perrine.
So, city attorney, remind me, it's late. We have to have 3, right? But how do we strike one of the other ones? How do we?
So it's majority vote.
She's reading it now.
I don't think any of them get strike. They're all equal.
That's what I would think, yeah, you
I
can't.
don't think any strike.
So I think we just go back again with all the same
And
4, because
right.
nobody had
We
a.
have to do it again, and then after this, if after this second ballot, so this was always the situation where the 2 nominees received 2 votes each,
Yeah,
so.
And I think you can only do it 3 times before.
I
And
think,
then,
yeah.
and then you
Yeah, we
continue
have-
it.
yeah. Okay, so same 4 nominees, 1 more vote, and then we get 1 more try. I guess we can, at that point, pause for some discussion, maybe.
Okay, this is the second ballot. The results are as follows. Commissioner Colodi votes for Lillian Conrad. Commissioner Sachs votes for Walter Allen. Commissioner McGuirk votes for Lillian Conrad. Vice Mayor Hartman votes for Valley Perrine. Mayor Owen votes for Lillian Conrad.
Okay. We have a majority vote for Ms. Lillian Conrad, who's here with us tonight. Congratulations on your appointment to that board. Thank you for your willingness to serve. So she has been appointed as a member of the UC for the remainder of the term expiring September 7th, 2019. Item C. Do we have to make a formal motion on that, Carrie? Or does the ballots count?
The ballots
Ballot
counted.
counts, that's what, all right. Item C, Turnbull Creek Land Preservation.
Mayor, in this item, the staff report summarizes the formation of the Turnbull Creek Land Preservation Committee and their activities to date. Just a few items, I know there's discussion the commission would like to have. We've had 3 meetings to date with the committee. At the last meeting on April 8th, just to bring everybody up to speed, we went through in some detail, I call it a progress report of the status of the ongoing and planned land acquisition activities. We provided a series of maps for the board and any interested audience members, really an interactive process to just explain where we're at in the evaluation process. A question was raised at that meeting and also at the next commission meeting is, should the committee make recommendations? And that's really why this item is on the agenda tonight. So there were 3 questions listed in the staff report, maybe to trigger the discussion. First was, is the committee meeting format meeting the intent of the city commission? If so, is the commission okay with the items we had recommended for their next meeting on May 13th? And then finally, is the city commission okay with a potential joint meeting with the committee tentatively scheduled for June 10th? So we're glad to take any questions at this time, Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Colodi, I think this was your
Yes.
request.
The intent of this committee was, in my mind, and agreed to by this commission, that the purpose of this committee, the first purpose and the written purpose, is to listen to presentations and disseminate the information to the public. That's what it was. I think that, and I even said it myself, I'm not adverse to the committee making recommendations. However, what had truly upset me was the committee was presented with a couple choices as to how to file future applications totaling millions of dollars with about 10 minutes of time to consider it. Being they didn't have the information ahead of time, I didn't have the information ahead of time, and I found that to be inappropriate. I think basically what you were asking was for them to rubber stamp your choices without them having the ability to put their own thoughts in a way that they could really digest the information that the staff had and given to them. It just, it seemed inappropriate. It's like I've been saying on any number of issues. We got to tell people ahead of time what they're going to be asked to vote upon and what they're going to be asked to approve. I would like to see our information officer work with this committee after each one of their meetings to try to help them formulate a press release that could be then sent out and they could bring to their various organizations. Now, I was pleasantly surprised by the people who were appointed to this committee. It was not my intention to have experts to be another layer of review and approval. It was just to spread the word out there. So I would like the committee to meet the requirements of the formation, the resolutions, and the ordinances that we passed. I would like to continue for the next 2 months with their assigned timetable. And as we know, this whole project, the spending of $15 million is going to go on for a while. So I think that after these 2 months, and I agree that there should be a joint meeting in June, that maybe we look at reformulating the committee somewhat to, I don't want to use the word give them more power, but to give them more information ahead of time and let them make some real decisions that would help us as it goes along. That's basically where I would like to see it go.
Okay. Any other comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, you can take it.
Go
Just
ahead,
real
Jake.
quick, Jason. I would like them to have the total freedom to express their candor opinion and with no stumbling block before them in a joint meeting. And I don't really have much more to add than that they have free expression to tell us exactly what they think about it. And they be included as well when we start discussing financing. And the most important thing is that they do not sunset till the task is complete and that they're actually given a work product to strive for. So if you could define that a little better, Mr. Fields, that would be great.
What-
Thanks.
Hang on though. We defined it for them. I mean, the work product we defined, so we're not putting it on Mr. Fields to define the work product. We define that work product. Commissioner Colodi just talked about what that work product is. We can have some more discussion about it, but just to be clear, I don't think we turn to staff to, I don't want to turn to staff to do that, because the work product we gave them was to be an advisory board that was for informational purposes only, basically. Now, whether or not we need to adjust that is our call, not Mr. Fields.
All right, I stand corrected, Mr. Fields.
I just don't want to put him on. I just
This
want to put him
body-
on
this
the
body-
spot.
No, and I don't either, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank. This body should give them free rein to express exactly how they feel about the project in all aspects.
There you go. I'll take that. Commissioner McGuirk.
Thank you, Mayor. So I specifically recall Commissioner Colodi wanting to create an advisory board. And to me, it seemed pretty clear the first go around. We would appoint citizens to this board to be provided any and all information that we have. So there is basically eyes from the community on this process throughout the entire time. And they are able to meet and with staff at these meetings and ask as many questions as they need to understand where the process is at, but most importantly, what we are doing. And Mayor, I'm glad you clarified that for Commissioner Sachs, because this staff does not task the group with specifically anything. And I do recall Commissioner Colodi at one point saying, well, you know, I certainly wouldn't mind if they gave recommendations. And in general, I don't have a problem with that. And I said that when he proposed that that was at the next meeting that we adopted the committee. And I still think Commissioner Colodi had a valid, solid idea of creating a group of local people who have the ability to get all the access of the information that we have, that staff has, as to what the current situation is for transparency. And these people can then disseminate this information out in the community to anybody that asks about it. And I wholeheartedly agree with that concept. And I guess, and that was my understanding of the committee. When we start having discussions about we need their recommendations, they need to be getting from staff certain things, or they need to be, if we're going to escalate that committee, then I want to be very specific on what that is. And most important, I want everyone to understand that regardless of what that committee does, the committee is us right here. And I do not want to push anything on that committee or confuse that committee as to what we're supposed to be doing. And I like the original intent of that committee. And I would be a little nervous about escalating that committee because I think it muddies up who's supposed to be doing what. And I think that it actually hampers a little bit what the original intent of Commissioner Colodi's reason was for having that board in the first place. Okay. So I would, if there is interest in a joint meeting, I have absolutely no problem with that, and I would certainly attend that. So those are my general thoughts on the committee, where it's at and where I think it should be. Thank you, Mayor.
So I voted against the original motion because I felt a committee that had no say-so or no input was a useless committee if all they were going to do is regurgitate information. I mean, I think any of the committees that we currently have, if you ask them, they're going, I wouldn't volunteer for any of that. I think we put some really good people on the committee. So when we decided to allow them to make some recommendations and even have a joint meeting, that kind of reinforced my belief in this committee. I think there's very knowledgeable people on this committee. We obviously can't go to every meeting, don't always get everything that's published or out there. So to have a second set of eyes, you know, information can do us no harm, the more information that we have. So for them to have it, some kind of, to get the information, kind of have them, give them a chance to regurgitate that information and provide it to us, I think is a positive thing. But I agree with Commissioner McGuirk is the decision-making process rests with this board. So I don't want them to get some kind of a false sense is that they're going to make recommendations, they're going to be the deciding factors. That's going to rely on us, the final product. I don't think there was ever any doubt as to what the first purchase area was going to be, because that was the initial grant that we went for. So everybody knew, even before we voted on the bond issue, what area we were looking at first. It was the one that was going to be possibly developed first and had the largest impact. So I don't think that's any surprise. So to say that we asked them to rubber stamp that, I think is incorrect, in that I think all of us knew going up front that that would be the target area to look at first. I do think that given their expertise and their knowledge and the information that they've asked for and collected, they will certainly be a benefit to us to say, what should we do next? Or where should we look at next? Or what might be the best opportunity to get the best bang for our buck? So I like where they have gone. I like the idea of a joint meeting, but I also want them to realize is that this is where the buck's going to stop, so.
Just
Well
to,
said.
before you put your comments in,
All
answer
right.
Mr. Hartman.
Okay.
Mr. Hartman, there was no subject that came up about the main property that everybody thinks about. What it was is there was 3 additional parcels for well over $3 million that they have approved, made motions, second, and approved that we should buy them next. And that's not their position. They had no background on that. That's where my concern lies. I have no problem with them through a public news release saying we considered certain things and this is what we thought about it. There's no need for them to make motions or anything like that. I agree that it confuses the issue.
Thank you.
So I hope I've made myself clear on what my concerns are.
To be clear, their motion wasn't to purchase it. Because again, they have no power to do that by any stretch. Their motion was to recommend to us that be the next step. That did cause the confusion because of whether or not they had that authority to do that. But I agree with, first of all, Vice Mayor, I don't know if you just came up with that, but that quote of information can do us no harm. I think we should tattoo on the side of City Hall somewhere. That's really good. But I think it was well said. We had this intent of forming an advisory committee, which is something I'm going to talk about again in my mayor comments. Seeing the level, the caliber of folks that are on that committee, I'm very proud of my nomination, Dr. Katie Tripp. Just such an amazing resource to have looking at this. So the notion of not wanting their input almost seems a little crazy to me. I think how that is done, and certainly Commissioner Colodey's point I think was well made about, I think I was at that meeting. There was much confusion at that meeting. They were a little, sidetracked on, what are we doing here? Why, yeah, I guess I'll make a motion to support that, but they really got that kind of, right there live. It was my understanding. So I think we can smooth those details out, work better on that. So any other comments on this item? I'm okay with a joint meeting as well.
Again, the task force is looking for a work product. They're looking for a summation. They're looking for any suggestion that we can give them. If we are the ultimate decider, they would like some input. And I don't think they really have that direct connection right now. They can have their own thoughts, but maybe we should give them a questionnaire. Or that's my feeling on it. They seem adrift.
Yeah. So I didn't hear from, I hear Commissioner Sachs' point, and do we need to add any clarity to the governing language of that, or just even right here, I don't think we have to go back to the ordinance, but just right here, do we want to add clarity on what types of communication we would be looking for from them? Is that Dr. Tripp calls me personally and your appointee calls you? Is it that they show up at a meeting? Like, how should they communicate their thoughts and ideas?
Well, I don't think it's clear, to me at least, exactly what we do and don't want them to do. And I don't want to get caught with a political board that makes recommendations and then it creates a problem if we're not adopting their recommendations. That was not the intent. And I think that we need to be very careful about how much latitude we give them in telling us what they think we should be doing. Again, I go back to what the original intent was, which was a group of citizens who were given the information to be able to be a separate set of eyes. Now, if they, and I don't know about formal press releases, I get nervous because that can end up with a lot of unintended consequences. So anyway, not to be long-winded, but I don't think I understand exactly what we do and don't want them to do, so I'm not sure they're gonna understand what we do and don't want them
And
to
I think that's the root of, I think that's kind of why we're here, is that there is a little, I mean, I was at the meeting, there was confusion. I mean, at one point I was up speaking and I said then, like, I don't speak on behalf of the commission. The governing document said do this, but I'm open to feedback from, I'm open to hearing the thoughts. My personal preference is, I agree with Commissioner McGuirk. I don't think they need to be doing formal motions. I mean, we're not creating another P&Z type board. I do think hearing from them, and if they have ideas, if they have thoughts, and this is what I'll talk about with the other advisory committees as well. And we appoint folks that are, well-rounded to these boards. They invest their time and energy, and to not be capitalizing on that, to not be getting that feedback and making use of that feedback is, I think, a real loss to us. So how we do that in a formal fashion that isn't them making a motion, approving it, and
The
et
joint,
cetera.
maybe they can be then made clear that their intent for the joint meeting is for them to simply communicate any of their personal feelings individually to us in a public forum about what they think's going on or what they think we should do. I don't mind them giving, and that's of course made public, so everybody can attend and hear what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Your appointments have every ability to call you up at
Yeah.
any time and
Yeah, of course,
discuss
yeah.
with you how the meeting went.
When is that
So-
public meeting planned for? June, or was contemplated for? I think
June 10th.
June 10th? So
June.
May, June, all right. I actually like that idea. So any thoughts on this item? I mean, this is kind of just trying to craft a path here for that commission, that advisory committee.
Well, basically, I think we should stay the course. They have a couple more meetings come up. We'll have the June meeting, and if we all feel that there should be some modifications to what we established, then we have staff make them.
Okay. And to be clear, when you say stay the course, their original charter is they're not making, I mean, they should really end the meeting without any motions, basically. I mean, they're there to receive information and to, provide staff thoughts and feedback, I guess, but they're not making motions to recommend to the commission. So when you say stay the course, just to be clear, that's what we mean. We'll get that feedback all at once at the June meeting. We can obviously talk to any member of that advisory committee individually, not at the same time.
I think I agree with that.
Okay.
Finally, the thoughts on sunsetting. Anybody?
Yeah,
chime in?
I think we can talk about it maybe at the joint meeting. That'll be towards the end of it. I think if they're willing to continue serving, there will probably still be work left to be done.
Yes.
But I think we'll have to talk about that with them first. And but yeah,
Well, my intent is, yeah, as long as we have, I don't mind continuing the board as long as we're spending money.
Sure.
The,
Playing lame.
They might recommend we spend all the money real quick.
yeah, I was about to say. I think we'll be lucky to keep them.
It may be done in 6 months.
Anything to add to that? I don't know that we need a formal motion, because it's not really changing anything, but I think we're giving staff some direction on how to proceed to, does that leave any confusion, anything you need cleared up from us?
No, just to confirm,
Yeah.
we will proceed with the May 13th meeting
Yep.
with the committee. That'll be of an informative nature, to review what we've done to date, let them know a progress report of what we're working on, no motions to be made, no recommendations. We will answer questions, hopefully have some discussion about that, and then the next meeting will be the joint meeting on June 10th.
Yeah. And I think if I were prodding them, what I would be prodding them for is questions that they have from their wealth of experience. Hey, what should we be asking? What might they ask of staff that is something we might not think to ask? So questions they may have or ideas they have, they are welcome to put those out there that you can help bring back to us, or frankly, many of the commissioners attend the meetings or go back and read the minutes. So we'll get those ideas there. So that's what I would be looking for from them. So certainly not wanting them to just nod their heads.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion on that item? If not, we will move
Mayor, if you,
sure.
just for the 10th, June 10th joint meeting, if you guys have any items specific that you want to put on the agenda, if you let us know, and we'll do that.
Okay. And I think I heard universal agreement on the joint meeting, so no issues with that.
and I also think we should communicate to the committee that if they have anything they want to specifically discuss individually or together,
Agreed.
that we'll be looking for them to comment on that.
Yeah, agreed.
We'll report that back at the, either
At their
before
next
the May
meeting.
13th meeting or at the May 13th meeting.
Okay. Next item up is mayor and commission reports. We'll start with our recently returned vice mayor. He came back and
came
was in
back.
doubt there for a while.
Yeah, just a couple things. I went by 27th Street, and it's really under construction. So, I mean, if anybody has any doubts of what's going on down there, they just need to drive by there. Everything is torn up. Yeah, they're going full bore down there, so it's looking positive. You know, but there's still ample parking, so I don't think it's had a negative impact as far as the beachgoers go or the people using the park. So I saw a lot of activity down there, and it was a good workaround. So, you know, thank everybody that had anything to do with that. I also noticed I was northbound on Atlantic when I came up to 3rd Avenue this weekend, and the traffic was backed up all the way to the corner. People trying to make a right-hand turn onto the beach. They were backed all the way up to 3rd, trying to get across the four-way stop. I saw an individual pull into the middle lane and then proceed forward because nobody was moving for quite a while, and a beach patrol officer pulled him over. When I looked down the ramp, there were 2 people working the ramp, but had only one lane open, and they were high-fiving and having conversations. I think the county needs to work better on clearing the roadways. I thought we'd had discussion before where they were, if it was feasible to open both lanes for people to get onto the beach, so I think we may need to readdress that. It was a pretty dangerous situation, and people were, I'm sure, going to cause an accident at some point in time, somebody trying to get a right-hand turn versus across the street.
Was that this Saturday or Sunday?
That was Sunday. And then the other thing I had is tomorrow is Administrative Professional Day. So for all of our administrative professionals out there, city staff or otherwise, I wish you a happy day tomorrow. I think that used to be called Secretary's Day.
Yeah.
But, you know, so we have a fancy title for it now. But to staff, hope they have a wonderful day tomorrow, and they truly deserve, yeah, you know, they truly deserve the recommendation, you know, all the recognition they get. I mean, our own Kelly's done a wonderful job, I think, with trying to get minutes prepared and stuff like that. I know, you know, I know Tammy's doing a great job with my schedule, so I certainly appreciate all that they do, and along with everybody else that we have, code enforcement and parking, all of those lovely ladies over there, tell them thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay.
I did not start the fire, for the record.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He just happened to be in Paris
Just
about the time the
about the
fire
time the
started.
fire started,
I don't know, maybe he missed fighting fires. Maybe we can get a picture of him manning a hose or something, I don't know. So I just hope everybody had a great Easter. It was a beautiful weekend. The last few days have been amazing, and it was a beautiful Easter weekend. And thank you for reminding me about Administrative Professionals Day. And yes, I owe a box of chocolates to a number of people who look after us, especially in the city, for all the great things they do in keeping us between the lines and figuring out all our schedules. Thank you, Mayor, that's all.
Mr. Sachs.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few comments and a few questions for staff. I'd really like to get some answers so that I can share them with my colleagues regarding the traffic lights for the fire stations 50 and 52. I hear you're all sighing. I would like to see paperwork from the TPO in regards to their assistance, if they can give any.
And I already, from you, the briefing, I talked to Brian, and he's looking for the information for you.
Very good, thank you. As you know, it met the warrants for FDOT, and I'm hoping we can fund this sometime soon. The Magnolia speed bumps, let me tell you, gentlemen, the residents are anxious. They would like to see something done. And I know we have our own time span, but they're desperate.
They, as I mentioned to you, Commissioner Sachs, they are ordered. We get the purchase order, we're just waiting to receive them. We turned around, I found the money rather than doing a budget amendment. We did a budget transfer to speed it up. We found the money immediately that day. We sent the purchase order to the vendor.
Just a gentle reminder, Khalid, thank you. I know that Vice Mayor Hartman had requested safety enhancements for 3rd Street. And while he wasn't here, we kind of kiboshed that. No harm meant.
Teaches you to show up to the meeting.
Exactly.
I forgot about that.
I won't hold it against you.
No harm meant, but in consideration of your thoughts on that, it's possible we do need to look at 3rd. Would it be possible to have, if there are sidewalks for all 4 corners, or at least 2, maybe east-west, we could have an enhanced crosswalk? And I don't mean electrical, just nice, bright, ways to slow people down.
Well, right now, we're thinking about either the stamped asphalts or just the striping crosswalk. The only thing is I have to do the handicap ramp on that side. So there's some more work, just the striping. So this is in progress.
Thank you.
Right now, I want to put the speeding cushions there and move on to the next one.
Great. Gentlemen, I don't know how many of you guys, did I see anybody at Lagunacy? Any Lagunatics out there? That was a really tremendous event. They get bigger and better every year. I think the adults are just as excited as the children. And I saw Randy's stone, his brick there, and my brick was there. So if you guys don't have a brick yet, get a brick.
I have a brick. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet. I bought a brick. I'll put it that way.
Awesome. It's really a great service that they do for the community and to enlighten people as to our beautiful lagoon. Thanks to Faith and staff for putting on the Adopt a Park picnic. Mike was there with me, Commissioner Colodi. We had a great time. Those guys can sure cook a hamburger, and I want to thank all the volunteers that helped to clean our parks. We could not do it without you. We truly couldn't. And our staff works really hard. But thank you to all the volunteers. I want to thank, I had the pleasure of coming again to a neighborhood council meeting, and thanks to them, I have 2 important things to bring up. First, thanks to the Dream Green team of Volusia, Chad from the Marine Discovery Center, and basically Chad did help along the Chamber of Commerce and made a brief presentation on their behalf. I still would like to hear from them concerning our plastics ordinance as we go forward. And also, if staff had any conversation, please, if you have not yet, with Reed Patillo and the school board on 6th Street. I noticed the pictures, I get copied on the pictures more and more, and it just, it seems really,
Commissioner
really
Sachs,
dangerous.
we have, I contacted the school boards almost 2.5 weeks ago. We have a meeting scheduled with them. I just cannot remember the date, so I'll send you the dates. We're meeting with Sarah Lee Morrissey, the facility manager there, and also with the, I think with the vice president or vice principal.
Yes.
As well, and also the police chief and myself and the city manager.
Thank you, Colin. Just a quick note regarding the Live Oak Center. I am compelled, I don't want to read the whole letter, but one of my neighbors who was displaced from the Brandon Center when we rebuilt the center, she plays bridge. I believe it's bridge. I'm not a card player. But there was a very nice group of older ladies who they have some problems and are hard of hearing. And they had issues at the Live Oak Center. It might be acoustics. I've heard some complaints about there being some echoes or not having quite the right sound in some of the rooms. If we could work together with some of the bridge players and make sure it's a smaller venue. We have a lot of people that want to use it. If we could somehow get everybody happy over there, that would make me very happy, because it is a beautiful facility.
Nancy's going to address that one real quick.
Nancy, sorry to get you up here.
Nancy Maddox, Leisure Services Director. We also have a bridge at Coronado, so it's not just at COA, we have it at other places. Plus our, across at the gym, they do have dominoes and bridge there too. So there's multiple places around the city that they can play. Unfortunately, they may not want to play at Coronado, they want to play at that specific spot, so.
No, they want Brandon.
No, they want the Brandon Center, yes, but they can't have the Brandon Center.
No, they can have the Brandon Center. It's just.
Yeah,
there's
rental, it is available for rental, absolutely. But,
They play 2 days a week, I guess.
yeah, well, I think they play 3 days a week at Coronado also, so.
And also the current location that they have out there at 2650 is available, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know where they were, at the building and
Yeah.
planning.
Yeah.
Dixie.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point, yeah.
I
The,
wanna-
the gym though, because the gym is literally across the lawn from the Live Oak
The
Center.
multimedia room,
Yeah.
they do have some, card games in there and dominoes, Mexican train dominoes and a couple other things, so.
Would you be able to just reach out to the
Sure.
lady that we got the letter from and see if the schedule works to use that room, and if that room has better acoustics, if they can at least try it?
We'd be happy to do that. And we are, I mean, COA is trying to work on the acoustics. They were purchasing some dividers to help with that. In the future, we will probably be looking into that also, so, yes.
Thanks for making the most out of that building. Appreciate it. Something very important. The group of people we call the neighborhood council, I'm afraid we might let them sunset if we don't take action. I think they're just coming into their own. They're really helping us along, and we had a tremendous amount of people came to the last meeting, and I thought it was very interesting. So do we have a motion, or do we have a rule regarding how long they stay in existence?
I'm getting old, but I thought that I remembered at our last meeting that we approved not sunsetting them. I'm getting some nods from the chair of that commission. So we added 2 members and we extended the term. You know the answer.
So, yes, the minutes reflected they were concerned about the sunsetting issue. I pulled the resolution that established that board. There is no term. It's not going to sunset. There was no, like in this one where it said you meet, Turnbull Creek, it said you meet
Certain
once
day,
monthly
yeah.
for 6 months. There was no sunset date on neighborhood council. So I didn't include that because there was nothing to change.
Gotcha. Neighborhood council lives forever.
So it was erroneous that they were, it was erroneous then that they were to sunset in May.
Yes, and we added 2 members too, which
Yes.
we have to appoint at some
Yes.
point.
And thanks again to everybody who's serving. That's all I have. Thank you for your patience, guys.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Colodi.
2 items. As a member of the Fire Pension Board, I did meet along with Commissioner McGuirk, and I think we made some progress in what has been a kind of a bottleneck in the terms as to how their pension's calculated with overtime, and I think that that's going to be resolved soon. The other item is a little more far-reaching. Flagler Avenue has been overwhelmed by our good economy and the good job the merchants and everybody else is doing. And I'm actively working on a number of different fronts to try to make improvements. I've met with the staff, including Chief Khalid and Brian. They're very helpful as to how we should move forward. Our parking study is being updated and will form a basis for our further discussions. As Commissioner Hartman said, traffic is abominable, extends all the way down to 3rd. That also involves the county to a great extent with the beach access. And I've asked for and expect to have a meeting with Deb Denny's 3rd week in March to express our dissatisfaction with the way some of the things are operated and the fact that they made an arbitrary decision not to fund any parking improvements west of Atlantic, yet they put in a really big parking lot at South Atlantic and Hines, I believe, Heil, on the other side of the street. So I think we deserve equity. There should be some parity there. Have met with the Business Association, also met with staff and the Hampton Inn regarding their operations. So I think we've gotten the attention of the businesses and shown to them how we just want to make things work better and not at their expense. So I think we're making progress there. It's going to be a long road. I don't think we're going to see any really big changes for a while, but I'm going to keep after it. Delivery trucks are a difficulty. I've discussed that with the chief and what we can do about it, which isn't very much. So that particular guidelines that governs how they approach delivery vehicles will also be looked at, and possible changes may be made there. Maybe we need loading zones early in the morning, maybe we don't, but it's in a formative stage right now, and I hope to bring items before this commission. The first item that I would like to put on for discussion is an additional parking, I hate to call them parking attendants, parking monitor, where we could add a additional half a person to work during big events and big traffic days. However, the chief has said that he needs direction from the commission as to the extent of what they really should be doing. So I would like that put on an agenda, our next agenda for discussion, so we can go forward. I just want to keep the ball rolling and keep progress going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any concerns with adding that to an agenda? I think that's a worthwhile discussion to have, definitely to give staff direction.
Is it next, do we have time on the next agenda? I just didn't want to put it in there too close. I know we got a lot.
It shouldn't be a long discussion.
You've seen us discuss stuff, right?
Famous last words.
I talk too much.
It's 9:30. All right. Is that it? You finished?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you all. A couple of items. First, yeah, some great, real Chamber of Commerce weather the past little bit. Some great events. Been able to attend. Won't go through them all. Had a chance today to have a Congressman Waltz, our congressman, is in the area over the Easter break. Congress took some time off, and he's spending some time in the area, boots on the ground. Had a second chance to meet with him today, and talking about a culture of service in our community. And it was just really an inspiring talk. And it leads me to I'm something that I missed earlier, and I'm going to have to apologize publicly, and then we're going to make up for it next meeting. But there was a young lady who was here at the beginning of the meeting. I had a crossed wire. It's not on staff. It was on me. I was supposed to acknowledge. She had, on her own, reached out to us, came to City Hall, asked if there was any rules about cleaning up parks, if she would be allowed to do this and not get in trouble. Rounded up 21 or so of her friends, and they went and cleaned up a park, pulled out 4 or 5 bags of trash, all completely voluntarily. And I know many people out there that have adopted parks, but to see a young person stepping up to this was something I wanted to acknowledge. So at our next meeting, hopefully if she's able to attend, and if not, I'll do it privately. But yeah, just that culture of service that I hope we can create in our community. Couple of things to address some things that have been said on the meeting with our council representative. I guess I'll just remind you going into that, I'm always very sensitive to not speaking on behalf of the city or the entire commission unless it's something we've discussed. So I'm confident in you having that meeting. You can do that. If in advance of that meeting we're able to talk through some of those items so we can maybe share a unified front, that would be good, or other things like that. But just something to keep in mind on that. On the delivery trucks, I've also kind of tried to work that issue, but I know it's your zone, so I'm gonna letting you kind of run with it. I'll tell you, I've had some people start texting me pictures of resident offenders where there's landscape trucks that block the road, there's repair vehicles that block roads. So, there's two sides to every story that always come out, but I think it's a worthwhile thing to keep pushing on. On glass recycling, we talked about it earlier, and during the meeting, we got an email that was, I just encourage my commission to read. It was an extremely interesting article from City Lab, which is a great resource for progressive cities. It's something I read as often as I can, so take a look at that. It was really interesting. A couple other notes. Roosters. First, I wanted to point out we have a new addition to the chamber up here. There's a picture that someone sent me. It may not stay there forever, but I wanted to hang it up tonight in recognition of the week that was dedicated to roosters.
Is that the main one?
What's that?
Is that the main
No, that's the nice one, I guess. I don't know. It's the one that posed for a picture. So, so as many of you may have followed on social media, roosters on Flagler kind of blew up as a topic. As typical with things in the public space, there was probably as much misinformation as there was real information. But it boiled down to the community overwhelmingly loves the unique flair that the chickens and roosters bring to Flagler, but there is increasing concern over, I think there's one or two that have become aggressive. And from what I learned and spending way too much time on this, is that this has happened on occasion. So every couple of years this kind of happens, one becomes territorial and we have to send it to greener pastures in Samsula, and then everything's copacetic again. So really didn't want to bring this up in a public meeting, but since it caught so much, I was on Channel 13 News about roosters. So, yeah, I know.
Better you than me.
I know, yes. My first television appearance, and it was exactly as I thought it would be. It was exactly the topic I had always predicted that I would be talking about, was roosters. So I just wanted to make sure the commission was okay, that we have staff work with local animal people who do it all the right ways, contact a farm or something, some way to do that. Work with the business owners down there. I talked specifically to, I think it's Dylan who owns Go Juice. They tend to kind of hang out there a lot. He knows the rooster. I think it's named Pablo. I mean, he knows the one to pick. So yeah, there's 100 different names for the same rooster, I've learned too. Everybody has their own name. So any concerns with addressing that situation, but not touching all the other animals that are on Flagler? Hearing none. All right, we can take the picture down next meeting.
So you're looking for stunt roosters?
The roosters are watching us if we make it. They're also more popular than most of us, I'll tell you that. 2,000 votes on a poll in less than probably 24 hours. It was really, really fascinating. So, on a couple of more serious topics, not too serious, advisory boards. Talked about this a bit earlier. I'm on a bit of a campaign trying to create a culture, or perhaps reinvigorate a culture. We have these fantastic people that are serving on these advisory boards, and unless I'm missing it, I go out and I try to read their minutes. I try to listen or attend their meetings as much as possible. But the disconnect I think we have is we have big things coming before us. Recycling, whether or not we should discontinue that or not. The plastics ordinance. And I would love to have the input of some of these other advisory boards on that. Not, passing it, not making a motion saying yay or nay, but just saying, hey, here's some things to consider from an EDAB standpoint or from a neighborhood council standpoint. Did you think of this? Had you considered this element of that item that's kind of brewing over here at the city commission level? So I'm on a little bit of a PR campaign trying to solicit that from these groups. We don't really have a clear kind of mechanism to elevate those items. We specifically asked for the plastic ordinance to go to neighborhood council and EDAB. But I'd just like to see us, and I can happy to work with staff directly, or the whole commission can provide input, but I think we need some formal mechanism to flag things that are kind of somewhere in the pipeline, that they run through something so it comes back to us, again, not with a formal approval from any other board, but just pros and cons. Make sure to think of this. Here's a question to consider. Here's a potential impact. Here's a potential unintended impact. So it's something I'm passionate about. I think it could help us make better, more informed, more well-rounded decisions, and I think it'll better utilize those advisory boards that are putting all that time and energy on the items that they have. I've heard from a few that they say they struggle with agenda topics, and I'm like, well, I'm not struggling, so there's a disconnect, because I would love to have your view on a few things. So I'd like to see us close that gap. So any concerns, and I don't want to get out ahead of the commission, so any concerns with pushing that forward, working with staff to formulate some kind of a thing where we have a formal process to, not too formal, but we have a process to solicit input from those advisory boards. Any thoughts on that concept in general?
That's what they're there for.
That's right. It's right there in their title. Okay, thank you all for that. Last two things. They started clearing for the Beacon Apartments on the corner of Glencoe and 44. And it led me to remember a conversation that I had with someone where there was a suggestion made of along major arteries when we have projects like that. I think we should have screening that's put in place by the developer so that as that's all going, you're not having the dust, all the other things. You're not kind of watching the cooks in the kitchen, and then the nice final product kind of comes out of the ground. The landscaping is finished. I think we would do everyone some favors if we did that. It's how it's done in most communities you drive through. It's kind of the Disney effect of put up the wall, make the sausage, take down the wall, and everybody goes, oh wow, look at that. It's a little painful to watch things, even though it's all been approved and it's kind of, it is what it is in that case. But I think that would be something that I would like to see staff adding into wherever it is that we would add that requirement in. I know on individual PUDs we could probably add it as a requirement, but I'd love it to be some kind of overarching requirement.
Just real quick, that fence is going in on Beacon Apartments. For
Awesome.
that one, it was voluntary, so
Awesome.
they're a little late getting it up. We wanted to use that as kind of a trial to see if it was well received, with the intent of possibly bringing that back make it permanent.
Awesome. Thank you. Any thoughts from the commission on that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's a great idea. It's actually a really good idea. I want to compliment you on that. But I want to make sure we don't require it for small businesses, small projects.
So yeah, there would have to be something. So for one, it would be like single family residential, not large scale like coastal woods, but like single family residential. I don't think it would require it for those. I'd say only on kind of major arteries. I think we could wrap some parameters around it. Certainly don't want it to be prohibitive, but when you're doing a massive project like that.
Yeah, large scale, there has to be some kind of size to it and maybe acreage or impact or something,
Yeah.
but definitely keep small business people out of it who are trying to
Yes.
put up places.
Agreed.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
If we're touching on future land uses and how we let them grow, I have concerns about these large properties and how they evolve. And I had heard, I'm not sure where, maybe staff could help us out. I had heard that the city can preempt the state as far as clear cutting. This may be innuendo, it may be a story, but it may be true.
Yeah, it may be. I tell you what, I think that's a question probably first raised with Brian directly, and then if we want to bring that back as a topic for the commission, I think you can bring that up as for a future agenda item. Yeah. But I'd first start with asking Brian in a one-on-one. It was actually that fencing idea was Brian's. It wasn't mine. It was Brian's. So I'll give him all the credit. So I think talking to him about that, seeing if there's validity to it, seeing what the channels may be. But yeah, if there's more we can do, be open to talking about it. And I have a note here about plastics, but it just says plastics, and I don't remember what I was going to say. So that's it for me.
Okay, just a comment on the screening.
Sure.
When there was construction on the North Causeway Bridge, the Department of Transportation used the lot they own in front of the Marine Discovery Center for their contractor storage yard. And my neighborhood requested of our staff to contact the state and ask them to screen it, which they did, and it made life much better.
Yeah.
The only concern I have would be from the police's standpoint. It's hard to monitor a site that's behind a fence. That's the only concern that I would have. That's my comments.
Okay. Next item up is city manager's report.
Just to point out that Arbor Day is on Friday at Old Fort Park. And also concerning Commissioner Sachs' comments on the lights, you've seen the email from DOT and you get in the reports later on. And also, if you are interested, Volusia County, they had a press release regarding the low-impact development workshop implementing the unimaginable, and that will be in Deltona, and it's April the 25th at 6 p.m. Today we had soup, ribbon cutting, so Commissioner Sachs, we missed you.
It was not on my calendar. I
Oh.
just wanted to bring up a point. I'm having a lot of events missing from my calendar. If you could please pass that on to staff. It has been problematic. Sorry I didn't join you guys. It looked like a nice Chamber of Commerce day.
It was
Thanks.
And if you have any questions on the staff report, that's prepared, so.
Arbor Day is going to be at Old Ford Park? Because I thought I saw email where it was in fact going to be at Riverside Park.
It's on the report, it says Old Fort Park, so I'll never check on it.
I think they moved it to Riverside.
That says Riverside Park.
That's
all right. Riverside, we'll see you at Riverside Park. Thank you. I think it got moved. I think there was a shift. Good catch. Any questions on city manager's report? Hearing none. City clerk's report.
Mr. Mayor, at your last meeting, you asked me to come back today with a little update on ADA compliance and things like that. I just wanted to share with you that city staff's been making progress in its efforts to begin remediation of non-ADA compliant documents found on the city website. Initial steps have included the publishing of modified agenda packets to the city website, while taking steps to provide elected officials, city staff, and other citizens with electronic access to complete agenda packets. Recently, as of Friday, 8 staff members attended training in Lakeland to familiarize themselves with alternatives available to format documents to bring them into compliance and to remediate past archived documents. As for a timeline, a more concrete and planned schedule should be available by your next meeting to include the amount of back years of archived documents to uniformly go back to. The city clerk's office continues to provide any and all citizens access to any documents that they request, and actually people are very understanding and they're very nice about it.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Johnny. City attorney.
No report tonight.
All right. No further business. Adjourned.
Not too bad.